Chapter 441, Little Hangleton Cemetery. Voldemort's curse shattered the silence of the night like a clap of thunder, signaling the official onset of the war. He was exchanging barbs with Dumbledore when, unexpectedly, he raised his hand and unleashed an Abracadabra. The curse, with its black and green sparks, streaked through the air like a dark meteor, aiming straight for Harry. Harry, caught off guard, could barely muster a defense. His mind blanked, and his wand drooped uselessly towards the ground. At this critical juncture, a tombstone in the cemetery was suddenly propelled from its base, landing with a resounding crash between Harry and Voldemort. It acted as a formidable shield, sparing Harry from the lethal curse. Voldemort, without missing a beat, redirected his wand towards Dumbledore and launched a dazzling green light into the sky. Dumbledore, with a swift apparition, dodged the attack and reappeared behind Voldemort. With a flick of his wand, Dumbledore summoned another tombstone, this time targeting Bellatrix. Bellatrix, caught off guard, unleashed a barrage of spells in panic, but her efforts were futile against the solid marble. The tombstone hit her with tremendous force, sending her flying before pinning her to the ground. Simultaneously, a cross-shaped tombstone soared towards Voldemort. He, too, used apparition to evade, reappearing beside the cauldron. As Dumbledore pressed the attack, Harry was whisked away by an unseen force, pulled to safety behind Dumbledore. "You would be foolish to stay here, Tom," Dumbledore stated calmly. "The Aurors are on their way. By the time they arrive, you'll be dead, and I'll have vanished." Voldemort retorted with venom. His narrow, red eyes glared at Dumbledore with malice, his wand tracing an intricate arc in the air as if inscribing a death warrant. He launched a killing curse at Dumbledore. However, Dumbledore, anticipating the move, had already shifted his position via apparition. The curse, missing its mark, struck a lush cypress tree which withered instantly, its green leaves turning yellow and cascading to the ground. Dumbledore then wielded his wand with greater intent. The spell he cast was invisible and undetectable to the naked eye, yet its power was immense. Even though Harry was shielded behind Dumbledore, the sheer force of the spell made his hair stand on end. Voldemort, recognizing the gravity of the threat, conjured a gleaming silver shield to fend off the attack. The spell, while not visibly damaging the shield, elicited a low, resonant trill from it. This eerie sound reverberated through the night, unsettling those present. Seizing the moment, two Death Eaters fired Avada Kedavra curses from behind the protection of the silver shield, aiming for Dumbledore. Despite the distance, Dumbledore didn't flinch. With a precise gesture, he summoned a tombstone to intercept the curses. The tombstone shattered into countless pieces upon impact, but before the debris could settle, Dumbledore, with a swift motion of his wand, conjured a slender, blazing flame. It surged from the wand's tip like a dragon made of fire, enveloping Voldemort and his silver shield in a fierce embrace. The shield's light waned under the assault, eventually fading away, leaving Voldemort exposed and increasingly disheveled under the relentless blaze. In that moment, Dumbledore appeared to have gained the upper hand. The battle situation shifted rapidly. Voldemort's open mouth suddenly engulfed the matchlock. When he spat it out, the flaming whip Dumbledore had created transformed into a giant snake made of fierce fire. The fire snake quickly broke free from Voldemort's control and turned to attack its creator. Its flaming mouth hissed angrily, as if challenging Dumbledore. Seizing the moment, Voldemort shrouded himself in a layer of mysterious black energy and began to ascend slowly into the sky. Meanwhile, the fire snake positioned itself menacingly before Dumbledore, poised to strike. Above Dumbledore, the sky erupted into flames as Voldemort, suspended in midair on a stone tablet not far away, raised his wand high. In that moment, he resembled a demon overseeing the battlefield from the night sky. "Be careful!" Harry couldn't help but shout, his instincts urging him to rush out and assist Dumbledore. Dumbledore glanced back at Harry and commanded, "Stay there and don't move." As he spoke, Harry felt an invisible magical force push him back. Dumbledore then pointed towards the ground, causing the soil and a tombstone to merge into a colossal stone warrior that encased Harry, protecting him like a fortress. Just as Dumbledore issued his command, a dazzling green light burst from Voldemort's wand, aiming for Dumbledore's vitals. Simultaneously, the fire snake launched a deadly attack. At this critical juncture, the phoenix fox bravely positioned itself in front of Dumbledore. It spread its broad wings, opened its mouth, and swallowed the green light whole. The next moment, Fawkes burst into a ball of blazing flames. Its body shrank and wrinkled, falling weakly to the ground, unable to fly. However, Fawkes's sacrifice was not in vain. Dumbledore, seizing the moment, waved his wand, unleashing his majestic magical power. The giant fire snake, still some distance from Dumbledore, was flung into the air by his wand, resembling a meteor in the night sky. It twisted and struggled, before finally dissipating into a plume of black smoke in the endless night. At the same time, under Dumbledore's magical command, mud and fragments of tombstones rose from the ground, forming a massive mud cocoon that enveloped Voldemort. Dumbledore managed to perform 2 tasks simultaneously, completing the spell. For several seconds, faint lights flickered within the dark cocoon, revealing Voldemort's desperate attempts to escape the suffocating restraint with various spells. Eventually, the cocoon could no longer withstand Voldemort's power and shattered. Voldemort emerged, covered in mud and scars, a stark contrast to his previous image. Yet he did not concede defeat and launched another killing curse at Dumbledore. Dumbledore met the attack head-on. The red curse and the green killing curse collided fiercely in the air, their magical powers surging like 2 battling dragons. Magical lightning erupted from the clash, shattering the surrounding tombstones and scattering fragments everywhere. The Death Eaters, standing at a distance, could only watch the magical duel unfold. Some overconfident Death Eaters attempted to join the fray and assist Voldemort, but they were instantly obliterated by the violent magical torrent, their remains scattered. In this tense confrontation, Dumbledore's magic gradually overpowered Voldemort's, with the red curse slowly overcoming the green. As Dumbledore's curse neared him, Voldemort, with a burst of strength, severed the magical link between them. Suddenly, a terrifying black mist erupted from his wand, swirling like a tornado in the darkness, carrying a destructive aura straight towards Dumbledore. Dumbledore, struggling against the onslaught of this dark energy, hastily conjured a transformation spell, erecting a magical barrier to block the attack. He knew that if he could withstand this assault, Voldemort would be left without the means to counterattack. However, Voldemort proved to be more cunning than anticipated. The surge of black energy, now an uncontrollable beast, soared over Dumbledore's head, obliterating the tombstones and stone warriors in its path, leaving Harry exposed. A sinister smile crept onto Voldemort's face as the stones and tombstones levitated, transforming into deadly projectiles aimed at Dumbledore and Harry. Just as it seemed Harry was doomed, the space before him split open, and a man clad in the new Auror uniform, complete with a standard beak mask, stepped through. "Be careful," Harry shouted, recognizing the Auror's uniform and understanding that help had arrived. He didn't want this unexpected ally to fall victim to Voldemort's attack. "It doesn't matter," the Auror responded calmly, seemingly unfazed by Voldemort's assault. With a casual wave of his hand, a semi-elliptical light shield sprang up, acting as a formidable barrier against the incoming debris. Voldemort's smile vanished. Just when he thought Harry was within his grasp, an unexpected Auror appeared, thwarting his attack. Yet the Auror wasn't done. With another gesture, the debris halted by the shield was sent back with equal force towards Voldemort. This counterattack, dubbed Reverse Arrow, a 3rd-level protection system, granted the ability to repel ranged attacks. Any projectile within its range would be absorbed and redirected back to its originator. Now it was Voldemort's turn to scramble. Caught off guard, he could only summon dark powers in a desperate attempt to counter the returning debris. The dark energy, like a tempest, pulverized the stones into dust, nullifying their momentum. However, the dust cloud still enveloped Voldemort and the Death Eaters, leaving them in a state of disarray. This Auror's arrival made it clear to Voldemort that Dumbledore and Harry would not be easily defeated. With the Auror Vanguard already on the scene and more possibly on the way, Voldemort, reluctant to risk the lives of his few remaining loyal followers, decided to retreat. "Retreat," Voldemort commanded decisively, casting a cold glance at Dumbledore. "Next time, if you still wish to live, it won't be so easy." With those words, he seized Bellatrix and soared into the sky, enveloped in a billowing black mist, disappearing into the distance. Chapter 442. As Dumbledore and Voldemort engaged in an unprecedented duel, the chaos on the Quidditch pitch had finally subsided. Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, emerged from his hiding place, accompanied by Nymphadora Tonks. They walked through the auditorium, visiting the wizards who had been scarred by the battles and riots. Fudge's cheeks ached as he realized he had been misled by the Deputy Auror Director. He had envisioned himself arriving when people were most vulnerable, shining like a beacon in the dark night, offering comfort and strength. He had believed, naively, that his presence as minister would garner gratitude and support, as Tonks had advised. However, the reality was starkly different from his expectations. To the people who had just endured the disaster, Fudge, the dignified Minister of Magic, was merely a target for their pent-up emotions. They either cried out, begging for help, or screamed threats, demanding that the ministry reveal the truth and punish the instigators. In an attempt to calm these agitated individuals, Fudge's bald forehead glistened with sweat. "Minister, the weather is a bit hot and muggy. Please wipe your sweat away," Lucius Malfoy said, offering a handkerchief with a careful gesture. Fudge accepted it and dabbed at his forehead. "Lucius, the Ministry of Magic will address your recent application as soon as possible," he said, his voice laden with goodwill. "That's wonderful, Mr. Minister," Lucius replied, bowing slightly. A smile flickered in his eyes, but it was a mask of politeness, owned through years of pure-blood wizard etiquette. Deep down, Lucius was not relieved or joyful. Instead, he was engulfed in worry and fear. His former master had caused such upheaval, and Lucius had been oblivious to it all. Being excluded made him uneasy. He would have preferred a direct reprimand from Voldemort, or even to endure the Cruciatus curse over this uncertainty. His anxiety deepened with the realization that he had failed to forewarn Ethan Green. Did the Dark Lord and Ethan doubt the Malfoy family's loyalty? Would they face repercussions? These concerns cast a shadow over Lucius's thoughts. Glancing at his son Draco, who was assisting with the wounded nearby, Lucius felt a mix of relief and fear. During the recent turmoil, Draco had shown commendable leadership, rallying the Slytherin students and contributing to the protective efforts of the Erudition Society. His transformation from a mischievous child to a responsible young wizard was remarkable. Yet, Lucius was troubled by Draco's disregard for the Malfoy family's cautionary principles, especially after being influenced by a Muggle-born girl. "Please rest assured that our Ministry of Magic will severely punish those responsible for this crime. We will not let anyone involved in this heinous attack escape justice. In fact, based on the evidence collected at the scene, we have already eliminated these malefactors," Fudge declared, attempting to reassure the public and regain some semblance of control. When Malfoy expressed his concerns, Fudge addressed the crowd with a tone brimming with conviction and righteousness. He then gracefully approached a group of adept young wizards. After the danger had passed, they promptly rose to their feet, applying the magical knowledge they had acquired to assist in treating the injured. Fudge offered his warm commendations. "I was just witness to your commendable actions. The spell you employed to fend off the attack was... He momentarily struggled to recall the name of the spell. "That's called the Power Wall Technique, Minister," Tonks interjected helpfully. "Yes, the Power Wall Technique. You executed it brilliantly," Fudge acknowledged, then sincerely added, "The Ministry of Magic would be honored to have you join us upon your graduation." "Especially you, Miss Hermione Granger," Fudge continued, his gaze resting on Hermione with evident approval. "Despite being Muggle-born, you've shown exceptional skill. You were the one leading the defense, weren't you?" Although intended as a compliment, Hermione detected the underlying bias in his words, a suggestion that Muggle-born wizards were expected to be inferior to their pure-blood counterparts. This was her first-hand encounter with the subtle discrimination pervasive in the wizarding world. She managed only a stiff smile in response, nodding in acknowledgement. At that moment, Fudge's attention was inadvertently drawn to the referee's stand, where his eyes widened in surprise. He noticed Cirilla leading a team of Aurors in uniform towards the stand. As order was gradually restored in the arena, Barty Crouch Sr. stood on the steps of the spectator stand, his expression graver than before, his face pallid and devoid of color. Alongside other uninjured adult wizards and under Madame Pomfrey's guidance, he was aiding in the treatment of those injured in the turmoil. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps caused a stir among the crowd. All eyes turned towards the source of the noise, only to see Cirilla and several aurors marching directly towards Barty Crouch. Cirilla halted in front of Crouch, signaling her team to refrain from arresting him outright. "Director Crouch, please forgive our intrusion. We have apprehended the mastermind behind this attack," Cirilla stated calmly, her words sending a chill down Crouch's spine. "And he is your son, Barty Crouch Jr." "My son?" Crouch lifted his eyelids, feigning surprise. "I have no idea what you're talking about." However, Cirilla noticed his hand trembling as it clutched his wand. She sighed, realizing his denial would persist until faced with undeniable evidence. Upon his arrest, he was found using a polyjuice potion to impersonate Alastor Moody. "Our investigation has revealed that he spent an entire year at Hogwarts under this guise, directly orchestrating this riot," she explained. Cirilla continued, "Our preliminary findings, obtained through legilimency, indicate that he is alive because you and your late wife assisted his escape from prison. The real Barty Crouch Jr. was actually your wife, disguised by polyjuice potion. To prevent his discovery, you even resorted to using the amnesia curse on our colleague Bertha Jorkins at the Ministry of Magic, resulting in her irreversible amnesia." Despite his visibly shaking hands, Crouch's expression remained stoic. "Furthermore, given your connection to him and your role as a referee in the tournament, we also suspect your involvement in several incidents and attacks during the games. You are required to come with us to the Ministry for further cooperation with the investigation," Cirilla concluded, laying out the evidence before him. Despite the reasons for his arrest, Barty Crouch Sr. appeared as if he hadn't heard a word. He continued to cast healing spells on the injured until the treatment was completed. Then he stood up, brushed off the non-existent dust from his knees, adjusted his magic robe with deliberate slowness, straightened his hat, and finally turned to Cirilla, saying in a deep voice, "Lead the way." From a distance, Fudge watched as Crouch, surrounded by aurors led by Cirilla, was escorted away. The smile on his face vanished. Turning to Tonks with a gloomy expression, he said, "It was premeditated. What on earth did Jaina want to achieve?" Before Tonks could respond, he angrily tossed his robe and left in haste. However, it was already too late for him to intervene. Jaina had completed the Great Purge, and the blockade on the Ministry of Magic had been lifted. Fuming, Fudge made his way back to the Ministry of Magic without encountering anything unusual. Upon his return, he received an invitation from Jaina Proudmoore asking him to meet in the minister's office. This peculiar invitation left Fudge perplexed. However, when Umbridge found him, he quickly grasped the situation within the Ministry of Magic. Learning that not only Crouch, but the entire Crouch family's influence in the ministry had been usurped by Jaina Proudmoore, Fudge was unable to remain composed. He had always seen Jaina as a respectful and compliant subord, innate until today. Bursting into the minister's office, he found Jaina sitting calmly in his usual seat. Overcome with fury, he grabbed a book from the shelf and slammed it on the table. The book, which featured a human face on the spine that appeared to be sleeping, was rudely awakened by the slam and let out a pained groan. However, Fudge's roar drowned out the book's complaint. "Jaina Proudmoore, do you still recognize me as the Minister of Magic?" he bellowed. "Minister, removing Barty Crouch was beneficial for both of us." "The feud between you two is hardly a secret," Jaina replied calmly, her demeanor no longer as deferential as before. "Don't try to manipulate me. We both know he lost any right to be the Minister of Magic a long time ago." Fudge shouted, slamming his fist on the table, causing the entire office to shake and buzz for a long time. Chapter 443. Gianna did not linger on the topic of Crouch, but shifted the conversation to another matter. "Do you know, your close friend Dumbledore is one of the masterminds behind tonight's operation, at least for the first half. The Aurors involved thought they were dealing with his remnants, some Death Eaters, but Dumbledore informed me that you-know-who has returned." Upon hearing this, Fudge's entire body stiffened instantly, as if struck by lightning. The possibility of the mysterious man's return was overwhelmingly shocking. His previously rigid posture slumped, and he began to mumble in disbelief. "This is not true. This is impossible. The secret man is gone." "Minister, regarding the authenticity of this news, I believe he will soon make contact with you. According to our current intelligence, when our aurors were preparing to go to the scene to support the operation, they discovered that a magic circle had been set up to prohibit apparition, similar to Hogwarts. I've just been informed that they have safely returned to the site. However, we are still in the dark about what exactly happened to 700. Gianna's voice was laden with deep concern. As if this wasn't alarming enough, Gianna broached a subject that further unsettled Fudge, targeting his fragile heart. "Connolly, as a friend, I must remind you of something. Let's set aside whether Dumbledore's news of the Dark Lord's return is true or false. If he has indeed come back, the public will undoubtedly lean towards Dumbledore to lead the fight against the Dark Lord. After all, he is currently the greatest white wizard in the world, isn't he? However, if the Dark Lord has not returned, then why would Dumbledore tell us this? What's his motive? This is a question worth pondering. Connolly, whether the Dark Lord has truly returned or not, you should carefully consider your position and future path." Seeing Fudge's increasingly panicked expression, Gianna decided to add more fuel to the fire. "In addition, what I need to inform you is that at the start of this semester at Hogwarts, I discovered that Moody was actually Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise. I was inclined to arrest him at that time, but Dumbledore stopped Ethan and me. He suggested we wait until now before taking action. I'm really curious, why did he make us wait so long? What was he planning during this time? These questions have been bothering me. However, this also presented me with an opportunity, a good opportunity to expand my achievements." Gianna's words overwhelmed Fudge, leaving him in silence. Seeing his silence, Gianna continued to instill ideas into him. "Of course, the reason I cooperated with him on this matter is to ensure I can become the Minister of Magic in the future. But I'm different from you and Dumbledore." Fudge, immersed in shock, raised his head in confusion upon hearing this. Seeing his blank expression, Gianna shook her head and continued. "In this regard, your interests and mine are the same. I also don't want Dumbledore to come to the forefront and live in his shadow, where you will need to consult and respect the opinion of a principal on everything in the future, as you do now." She paused, then said in a sincere tone, "Connolly, I am much younger than both of you, and I can definitely wait for you to retire and then naturally take over the ministerial position. Considering the current situation of you and Dumbledore, your political careers don't have much time left. If you want to realize your plans and maintain your power, you must fight. What I gained today is enough to guarantee this. In addition, unlike Crouch, you have not made any mistakes. You are still the most powerful person in the Ministry of Magic. My fight with you will only cause the Ministry of Magic to begin to split. Not only do I have a low chance of winning, but it will also easily create opportunities for outsiders." After Jaina finished speaking, she casually picked up the magic book with a human face from the desk and began flipping through it, giving Fudge some time to process her words. After a moment, she added, "In fact, who I choose to cooperate with isn't really about cooperation. While I personally prefer you, Minister Fudge, with whom I've always had a good relationship, cooperating with Dumbledore wouldn't be too unpleasant either. If I choose him now, I might have to endure it for a few more years, but I think I've finally secured the position I wanted, Secretary Fudge." In the Little Hangleton Cemetery, following the departure of Voldemort and the Death Eaters, silence once again enveloped the land that had been tainted by dark magic. The air was still warm with the remnants of magic, but the tension and fear had quietly dissipated. Harry seemed to have recognized the arriving Auror. Just as he was about to greet him, he saw the Auror nod slightly towards him and Dumbledore before disappearing in a flash of light with a burst of magic. When Ethan changed his clothes and returned to the Quidditch pitch, order had been restored. The night was deep, and the only sounds were those of a few Aurors patrolling the area, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The occasional moans and conversations of the injured served as reminders of the thrilling battle that had just taken place. Ethan scanned the crowd and saw the girls sitting in their seats, waving at him. Hemin, Jiangqiu, Luna, Ginny, Astoria, and the Delacour sisters had all come together after sharing a crisis, which brought them closer. Ethan nodded to them before walking towards Dumbledore and Harry. Dumbledore was examining Harry, and upon seeing Ethan approach, extended his hand in greeting. "Ethan, thank you for your help just now." Ethan simply nodded, showing no intention of engaging further. Dumbledore then turned to Kingsley, who was standing nearby, and said, "Please conduct some examinations on Harry for me." Kingsley nodded and turned his attention back to Harry. "Go on, Harry. Your friends are clearly worried about you, and you have much to discuss. You showed great bravery today. We'll officially award the championship trophy later, and then you can get some well-deserved rest. We shouldn't let the actions of these Death Eaters dampen our spirits. We'll discuss other matters later." Harry caught a glimpse of Ron hiding behind a pillar, exchanged winks and faces, and felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Despite having many questions for Dumbledore and Ethan, he agreed to Dumbledore's request, nodded to them, and followed Kingsley for further examination. "Voldemort's actions today were indeed unexpected," Dumbledore sighed, frowning. "Ethan, will you acknowledge Voldemort's return during the interview?" Ethan took a step back, maintaining a distance from Dumbledore, his tone neutral. "Sorry, Professor, but I didn't actually witness you-know-who's resurrection." "You weren't there tonight," Dumbledore began, looking anxious. Ethan quickly interrupted, emphasizing, "I was at the Quidditch pitch tonight, capturing Death Eaters." "Kingsley informed me of tonight's events at the Ministry of Magic," Dumbledore said, disappointment evident on his face. "Is power really that important to you?" At that moment, Dumbledore's robe was disheveled from the battle, with scorched marks on the edges, making him appear even more weary and aged. Ethan looked at Dumbledore, feeling a pang of guilt. Although he didn't fully agree with Dumbledore's methods and ideas, he couldn't help but feel sympathy for the old man standing before him. Ethan made significant efforts to uphold the safety of the wizarding world. With a heavy heart, he looked up at Dumbledore, intending to offer some words of comfort. However, all he managed to say was, "I'm sorry, Headmaster. In my view, Voldemort isn't our biggest problem. We have our own strategy." Dumbledore remained silent for a brief moment before finally nodding in understanding. "I comprehend, Ethan. We each have our own stances and decisions to make. I only hope you remember that whichever path you choose, you bear the responsibility for your actions." Their conversation concluded on a somber note. Please support this story with your likes, comments, and rewards. Your support is truly appreciated. Chapter 444. Ludo Bagman's voice resonated through the night sky, clear and compelling. "Ladies and gentlemen, despite the minor setbacks we've encountered during the game, we must not allow those dark wizards to triumph. This competition, which we hold dear, will undoubtedly conclude successfully. The results are now in. Please, take your seats once more. We are about to honor our brave competitors." As Bagman concluded, a brilliant white light bathed the podium, ensuring that spectators from every corner could witness the proceedings clearly. The audience, previously scattered, began to converge towards their seats, seeking solace and inspiration after the recent turmoil. First and foremost, let us extend a warm welcome to the presenter of this competition and one of our esteemed judges, Mr. Ethan Green, to the stage, Bagman announced, his voice imbued with respect and gratitude. Ethan conjured a chimera and soared into the sky. After a majestic loop, he descended gracefully onto the podium. There, he let out a roar so powerful and stirring that it instilled boundless courage and hope in all who heard it. Bagman continued to sing Ethan's praises. In the midst of the recent chaos, Mr. Green stood tall, courageously facing the Death Eaters and safeguarding numerous lives. Let us show our heartfelt appreciation with a round of applause. The applause that followed was overwhelming, a testament to the deep respect and gratitude the crowd felt for Ethan. His valiant confrontation with the Death Eaters had left an indelible mark, ensuring his name and deeds would be celebrated throughout the wizarding world. Now, please join me in welcoming our valiant competitors to the stage with your warmest applause," Bagman exclaimed with fervor. Hermione was the first to rise, stepping onto the podium to the collective applause of young wizards from Hogwarts and Bosbotans, followed by the other competitors. Krum, too, made his way to the stage, his actions during the event now understood to be the result of the imperious curse, absolving him of blame. His gaze was vacant, a clear sign he was still grappling with the curse's after-effects, hinting at a long road to recovery. When bagmen declared Hermione the champion, the venue erupted in cheers once more. Amidst the jubilation, Ethan handed her the gleaming trophy and a generous prize. Soon after, reporters swarmed the podium, microphones and cameras at the ready, eager to capture every moment. They bombarded the competitors with questions about their experiences and thoughts on the night's events. Ethan, Hermione, Harry, and Dumbledore were the center of attention, surrounded by a sea of reporters, their every expression and movement immortalized by flashing cameras. The interviews quickly gave rise to several hot topics, with the most sensational being Dumbledore and Harry's assertion that the mysterious man had returned. Ethan, having single-handedly halted the advance of over a dozen Death Eaters and directed the Aurors to apprehend those attempting to flee, received the lion's share of attention. The Aurors themselves had been vocal in sharing his heroic acts. Mr. Ethan Green, Principal Dumbledore, and Mr. Harry Potter have alluded to the return of the mysterious man. Can you confirm the veracity of this news? Did you witness these events firsthand? A reporter inquired eagerly. Ethan responded with a slight smile. As the Aurors have already mentioned, I spent the entire night at Hogwarts, engaging in a fierce battle with the Death Eaters on the Quidditch field. His response left the implication hanging in the air, a testament to his bravery and the night's harrowing events. The reporter asked, and Ethan shook his head, appearing somewhat helpless. It must be said that the behavior of these Death Eaters is extremely radical. They seem desperate to create chaos, which may indirectly confirm the resurrection of the Dark Lord they speak of. So this is all just your speculation? The reporter pressed on, seeking clarity. Does this feel like an imperial decree? You all seem eager to make headlines, Ethan earnestly advised the reporters. You asked me whether I admit it or not. In truth, I could simply say, no comment, but that wouldn't satisfy you, would it? What I mentioned earlier doesn't mean I confirm Voldemort's resurrection, but I do speculate that it's a possibility. If you ask me whether I believe in his resurrection, I'll tell you clearly, I do believe it. Your press seems very familiar with these Muggle theories, but you're still too young. I've been through many battles and seen much more. Which Muggle tactics haven't I seen? Their media is far superior to yours. I'm worried for you. You have one advantage. You can run faster than Muggle reporters, but your questions are too simplistic. Sometimes naive. He paused, then addressed a particularly disgruntled reporter. I'm sorry. As someone who has seen too much, I feel it's necessary to share my experiences. In the Dragon Kingdom, there's a saying about making a fortune in silence. Your enthusiasm makes it difficult for me not to speak up. If you engage in biased reporting in the future, you will be held accountable. I haven't claimed to witness anything firsthand, but you insist on asking if I know Dumbledore. He's our headmaster at Hogwarts. Of course, we know Dumbledore. Harry was surprised after hearing Ethan's response. After the interview, he immediately sought out Hermione to express his confusion. It's hard for me to understand. Ethan clearly mentioned in his message that he and Dumbledore had foreseen Voldemort's resurrection, and he even personally participated in the battle against Voldemort. But why didn't he publicly confirm Voldemort's return in the interview? Harry, Ethan must have his reasons. Hermione began to defend Ethan, but Ron interrupted her before she could finish. Harry, you shouldn't trust him. People don't want to see him come back, Ron said, but a glare from Hermione stopped him from continuing his criticism. In the chaos earlier, Hermione had used a spell to subdue a dark wizard. Then, as if realizing something, Ron quickly asked Harry, The Dark Lord, is he really back? Harry nodded solemnly. Yes, I witnessed his resurrection. Bellatrix Lestrange acted insanely. When Voldemort was resurrected, he initially chose other Death Eaters as sacrifices, but Bellatrix rushed out uncontrollably, questioning why it wasn't her. She volunteered to lead the resurrection ceremony and offered her palm, assisting in completing the evil rebirth spell. Harry's description sent a chill through both Ron and Hermione. Hermione's eyes widened in shock upon hearing about Bellatrix's behavior. She had never imagined that someone among the Death Eaters could harbor such deep feelings for Voldemort, shattering her perception of them as cold-blooded and ruthless. This revelation led her to ponder about the girls around Ethan. If Ethan were in a similar situation, would anyone sacrifice themselves without hesitation like Bellatrix? She was willing, but if others volunteered first, she wondered how she would compete for the chance to dedicate herself. Like Bellatrix, she couldn't do it. Jiang Chu might be capable of such an act, and Cyrilla, she would definitely not hesitate to be the first among the girls to offer her palm to Ethan. At this thought, Hermione experienced an inexplicable emotion stirring within her heart. When Neville heard Harry mention Bellatrix Lestrange's name, he clenched his fists tightly, his face etched with disbelief. Did she really cut off her palm? He couldn't help but ask. Harry nodded gravely. Yes, but Voldemort gave her a new hand, as luminous as moonlight. He boasted that he had imbued it with powerful dark magic, granting it incredible power that seemed to sap the life force from anything it touched. Harry vividly remembered the moment Bellatrix Lestrange tested the new hand. She had picked up a branch from the ground and effortlessly caused the once vibrant branch to wither into dust in mere moments. The eerie scene was still vivid in High's memory. Update Thor. Additional update the author. Please support me with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes, please cast them my way, the author. This support is truly important to me. Chapter 445. The Return to Hogwarts. When Harry and his friends gathered to discuss the man whose name must not be mentioned, they were unaware that he had quietly returned to the vicinity of Hogwarts. "You're an hour and 56 minutes late, Severus." A cold voice pierced the silent night sky. Voldemort stood enveloped in darkness, his pale left hand gripping a wand, its tip emitting a chilling light. He gazed into the distance, his eyes fixed on the bright lights of Hogwarts. Each window cast a warm glow, starkly contrasting the surrounding darkness. Voldemort watched this familiar scene with a mix of emotions. Hogwarts, his former home, held his most cherished boyhood memories. The castle's unique spires glimmered with a mysterious light against the dark summer night, a beacon of wisdom that had once illuminated his path of learning. Yet, now he found himself barred from entering this familiar place, first by an old man, and now by a young one. From the few Death Eaters who had managed to escape Hogwarts, he had learned of Ethan Green's remarkable deeds. Coupled with rumors from Bellatrix and others, Voldemort recognized that a young genius had risen in the wizarding world. Dumbledore would eventually succumb to age, and indeed, he was already old. But Ethan Green was only 15. The emergence of this young man instilled in Voldemort an inexplicable sense of urgency. Despite his confidence, Ethan's accomplishments forced him to reassess the situation. "Master, isn't it a bit too risky to meet here?" Snape's voice was low and humble as he prostrated himself on the ground, his black robe spreading out like a shadow. "This place is too close to Hogwarts, and Aurors are everywhere. If Dumbledore discovers us—" "Dumbledore?" A sneer formed on Voldemort's lips, and his red eyes gleamed coldly in the darkness. "Do you think I fear an old Dumbledore?" "No, Master. Dumbledore has been restless since your resurrection, fearing your return. After all, he is old and frail," Snape said cautiously. "Old and frail?" Voldemort snorted disdainfully. "I don't see what he has to fear, with that mudblood Ethan Green at Hogwarts." "Why, you didn't bring Dumbledore to arrest me, but came alone?" "I expected an elaborate ambush," Voldemort said with a hint of ridicule. "I have always been loyal to you, Master." Snape's voice grew even more humble. "You ordered me to spy on Albus Dumbledore at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Have you forgotten?" "Yes, follow my orders, and stay here for more than 10 years. You are indeed a loyal servant," Voldemort said with a sarcastic smile. "If you're so loyal, why haven't you come to me after all these years to save your poor master?" He stared at Snape fiercely, his red eyes piercing into the depths of Snape's soul. "Lift your head and look into my eyes," Voldemort commanded coldly. Snape slowly raised his head, his black pupils meeting Voldemort's magical red eyes. He knew Voldemort was using legilimency to probe his deepest thoughts. In that moment, Snape felt as if his soul had been laid bare, all secrets and lies exposed. He struggled to use occlumency to shield his true thoughts, presenting only the memories and ideas he had prepared in advance. "I thought you were gone. At that time, everyone was convinced of it." Snape's voice carried deep sincerity, each word a confession from the depths of his heart. "I made the unforgivable mistake of doubting your power." He closed his eyes, bracing himself for Voldemort's response. Clutching his chest tightly, as if grappling with his own betrayal, Snape admitted, "I have no intention of defending or covering up my actions, but this is the situation." "Yes," Voldemort responded, a soft smile playing on his lips, his blood-red eyes gleaming with malevolence in the dim light. His face, pale and smooth, resembled that of a cold-blooded serpent. "Everly, Yaxley, the Carrows, Greyback, Lucius, they all shared your misconception. They, along with many others, foolishly believed that the great Dark Lord had been vanquished by a mere infant." Voldemort's voice dripped with sarcasm and displeasure. "Even as I revealed the truth to them, explaining that I had ventured further along the path of immortality than anyone before, they refused to believe." He sighed deeply, his voice laden with infinite disappointment. "But you all doubted me. You have all disappointed me greatly." Suddenly, a green light erupted from Voldemort's wand, aimed directly at Snape. "Bone expulsion!" Snape screamed, writhing in agony on the ground, pleading for mercy. Yet, Voldemort observed his suffering with indifference, seemingly relishing the torture. This spell was more enduring and vicious than any before. The reason for such cruelty was simple. Snape was late. Yes, Snape had failed to respond immediately when the Dark Lord summoned his followers, and for that alone, he deserved to die. However, Voldemort had no immediate intention of killing him. He wanted to hear more from Snape to see if he could provide a satisfactory explanation. If not, the benevolent Dark Lord would not hesitate to deliver a surprise. "Why did you prevent me from obtaining the Philosopher's Stone 4 years ago?" Voldemort inquired slowly. "I didn't realize it was you at first," Snape managed to say through his pain. "At the time, I saw only a greedy, inept Quirrell attempting to steal the Philosopher's Stone. I admit, I did everything within my power to stop him, but you never approached me. Had you shared even a fragment of your plan with me, I would have assisted you in obtaining the stone. Do you understand why I didn't tell you? Do you grasp why I was so vulnerable? Would you prefer to share a body with a mediocre wizard? Were you too afraid to reveal yourself to a former servant?" Voldemort's gaze pierced Snape, his voice escalating with anger and disappointment. "Because I couldn't trust you. I feared you had shifted your allegiance from a loyal Death Eater to Dumbledore's pawn. At that time, I had no reason to trust you, so why should I believe you now, 4 years later?" He stomped on Snape's back. "Even if you could rush to my side immediately upon my resurrection, I might have been persuaded to trust you then, but you didn't." "Yes, I returned 2 hours later, Master," Snape said loudly, enduring the pain. "I followed Dumbledore's orders." "What? You obeyed Dumbledore and returned?" Voldemort fumed. "Yes, Master," Snape replied firmly, despite the pain. "I admit I was late, but I only waited for 2 hours. During that time, I ensured my continued presence at Hogwarts as your spy." Voldemort regarded Snape silently, contemplating his words. Seizing the moment, Snape quickly added, "Now, Dumbledore believes I am loyal to him. I can provide you with endless information about him and the Order of the Phoenix." "Order of the Phoenix?" Voldemort roared, his voice filled with loathing for the name. "Yes, Master. Earlier tonight, Dumbledore issued the call and reformed the Order of the Phoenix," Snape revealed, hoping to prove his value. "As expected," Voldemort snorted disdainfully. "Continue." "Over the past few months, the Dark Mark has become increasingly distinct, signaling your return. All the Death Eaters are aware," Snape explained. "I had ample time to weigh my options and plan my next steps, always keeping your commands in mind." He strained to convey sincerity, hoping to convince Voldemort of his loyalty and usefulness. Voldemort's high and clear voice echoed in the night sky, resembling cold snakes slithering through the air. "So, what important information have you brought me, Snape?" Snape replied without hesitation. "Master, I have gathered all the information about Dumbledore from the past 16 years for you." Voldemort nodded slightly, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "This is indeed a valuable gift for our meeting. You have done well, Snape. Anything else?" Snape continued. Crouch has been captured, along with his father. Old Crouch's influence in the Ministry of Magic has been completely eradicated. They have been EPARing for a long time, which is why Dumbledore was present at your resurrection tonight. A loyal servant, but unfortunately, so useless, Voldemort commented indifferently. To him, a deceased servant, no matter how loyal, held no value. I also have important information, Master. Snape took a deep breath. What is it? Voldemort inquired. Snape whispered, Dumbledore and Minister Fudge have had a falling out. I overheard their argument myself. Fudge refuses to believe in your return. I suspect it won't be long before he starts interfering with Hogwarts next term. Dumbledore will be too preoccupied with his own affairs to focus on us. A smile appeared on Voldemort's face for the first time since seeing Snape. Excellent. This is the first piece of good news I've heard today. The other servants are nothing but a source of regret. Suddenly, he fixed his gaze on Snape, as if trying to peer into his soul. Severus, you once begged me to spare the life of that mudblood Lily Potter, yet I ended up killing her. You don't hold that against me, do you? Snape met Voldemort's gaze, his voice steady. Master, she was just a mudblood. To die is just to die. He struggled to suppress the quiver in his heart, adding calmly, I have long since forgotten about that mudblood. Voldemort continued to scrutinize Snape's eyes. After a lengthy pause, he smiled and said, Very well, I now entrust you with a task. While keeping an eye on Dumbledore, also monitor Ethan Green and Jaina Proudmoore's group. They could pose a problem. Your will, Master, Snape replied expressionlessly, though a sigh of relief escaped him internally. This meant he had passed the test tonight. Voldemort trusted him once again. He had successfully completed his mission and secured his position. Chapter 446. The atmosphere in the Wizengamot courtroom of the Ministry of Magic was both solemn and austere. The walls of the hall were bare, devoid of any decorations or pictures, contributing to its bleak and gloomy appearance. Wizards filled the rows of benches, their attention riveted on the trial seat. In the front row, reporters from major newspapers and magazines had their automatic quills poised, ready to capture every detail of the proceedings. Old Barty Crouch stood a short distance from the trial seat, his posture upright, embodying the dignity of a senior Ministry of Magic official. His usually wrinkled magic robe had been carefully smoothed out, reflecting his characteristic neatness and dignity. Without the knowledge of Tonks and the two other Aurors on high alert behind him, one might have mistaken the scene for an ordinary trial, rather than one where he was the subject of scrutiny. The silence in the room was suddenly shattered by a series of heavy footsteps. The door at the corner of the dungeon creaked open, and 3 figures entered, 2 Dementors escorting a man between them. The Dementors, tall creatures with their faces obscured by hoods, gripped the man's arms with their decaying, lifeless hands. Despite their chilling presence, the man appeared largely unaffected, his face pale and expressionless. However, a flicker of emotion crossed his eyes when he caught sight of Mr. Crouch. As the Dementors brought the man closer, a wave of unease spread through the onlookers. Dementor 737 secured the man in the chained chair before floating out of the room, the door slamming shut behind them. The trial of Barty Crouch Jr. was both straightforward and frustrating. He calmly acknowledged all the charges read out by the judge without protest, yet he remained silent on the details of his alleged activities. This reticence left the judges and spectators feeling both helpless and frustrated, as it suggested they might not uncover the full extent and truth of the incident. I believe we should consider using legilimency or veritaserum, Dumbledore suggested, standing up slowly. His voice, usually gentle, took on a rare edge of seriousness. This may reveal whether you-know-who is truly back, along with other secrets of the Death Eaters. Fudge's face darkened, and he replied in a lowered voice, Dumbledore, I've asked you not to make such statements. They could incite panic in the wizarding world. Everyone has a right to know the truth, Dumbledore responded calmly. But Dumbledore, revealing this could disrupt the peace we've only just regained, Fudge pleaded, a hint of desperation in his voice. Fudge, Dumbledore said, his blue eyes piercing, hiding the truth will only do more harm to a defenseless wizarding world. Fudge clenched his jaw, his frustration evident. Dumbledore, you have no proof, he countered. That's precisely why we need to use legilimency or veritaserum, Dumbledore insisted, gesturing towards Crouch Jr. Sorry, Dumbledore, we can't do that. Both methods can be manipulated by those skilled in altering memories and can't be considered reliable evidence, Fudge argued, trying to appear more authoritative despite the sweat on his forehead betraying his inner turmoil. Dumbledore remained undeterred, his gaze unwavering. Fudge, I understand your concerns, but we must confront the truth, not flee from it. Only then can we truly protect the wizarding world. Their exchange was cut short by Jaina, the deputy director of the Legal Enforcement Division, who approached with a decisiveness that Fudge lacked. Jaina Proudmoore's voice echoed in the silent dungeon, commanding the jury to vote. Those who believe these crimes deserve the Dementor's kiss, please raise your hands. Without hesitation, she raised her hand, followed by a unanimous response from the wizards on the right side of the dungeon. The audience erupted into enthusiastic cheers, their faces marked with expressions of cruel victory. The recent finals had left many of their relatives and friends injured, and they were eager for justice. Dumbledore sighed, realizing further argument with Fudge was futile. You traitor! Crouch Sr. shouted as two Dementors approached him, tied to a chair in the center. His eyes bulged with fury. I told you a long time ago, stay at home. Crouch Jr., who had been expressionless under the trial seat, clenched his fists as a crazed light flashed in his eyes upon hearing his father's words. How could I possibly stay at home with peace of mind? He shouted hysterically. My master is far greater than you. We both had fathers who were very disappointing, extremely disappointing. We inherited our fathers' names in disgrace. To ensure the rise of the Dark Lord's power, I would sacrifice anything, even your life. You are crazy, Crouch Sr. roared back. I'm mad? Crouch Jr. raised his voice, echoing through the dungeon. We'll see who's crazy. The Dark Lord has returned, and none of you can escape. The Dementors, revealing the dark abyss beneath their scarves, leaned towards Crouch Jr. The white substance that was his soul floated out and was sucked into the Dementor's mouth. Dumbledore, who had always opposed the Dementor's kiss as a cruel punishment, couldn't bear to watch. Mr. Crouch, was the plan to replace him with yourselves decided before his trial? Tonks, who had been silent, suddenly asked. If you didn't care about him, why did you agree to let him go to the World Cup, leading to his eventual escape? Crouch Sr.'s back stiffened, his attention fixed on his son. Crouch Jr.'s clenched hand, whether from anger or unwillingness, eventually relaxed, perhaps due to the loss of his soul or Tonks's words. Now it's your turn, Mr. Barty Crouch, Fudge announced, turning towards Crouch Sr. The trial proceeded smoothly, with Crouch Sr. offering no defense against the charges, including aiding his son's escape from prison. His silence seemed like an admission of guilt. However, when it came time to vote on the charge of colluding with a dark wizard, Jaina Proudmoore unexpectedly voted against it. Surprised, her allies followed suit. Fudge was puzzled by Jaina's mercy at this critical moment, wondering why she would show leniency. He's a good father, isn't he? Jaina remarked, displaying a rare sentimental side. As a female politician, she seldom showed vulnerability, but in this moment, she did. Fudge, though surprised, was pleased to see this softer side of Jaina Proudmoore. Ethan, whether viewing Jaina as a political opponent or a colleague, believes it is preferable for her to be weak rather than cold-blooded. He values a soft heart in the complex world they navigate. Chapter 4447. In fact, Gianna did not have a clear stance on how to handle old Crouch before the trial commenced. The discussion on Crouch Sr.'s fate had taken place in Ethan's tower, where Gianna, Ethan, Onyxia, Cyrilla, Penello, and others gathered to deliberate on the subsequent actions and trial proceedings. Hermione, intrigued by the topic, joined to listen. Gianna, feeling somewhat embarrassed, expressed to Ethan her desire to release Crouch. This revelation surprised the group, leaving them puzzled about her reasoning. Only Ethan supported her decision, acknowledging, "This proposal is bold yet very sensible. Gianna, you truly embody the role of Deputy Director of the Legal Enforcement Division." "Thank you," Gianna responded with a modest smile, then elaborated on her reasoning. "I believe he no longer poses a threat to us. His reputation has already suffered immensely due to his regulatory violations in an attempt to save his son, who was sentenced to death. Moreover, his career, which began with combating Voldemort, has been tarnished further now that Crouch Jr. has defected back to Voldemort, causing significant unrest. This scandal has essentially dismantled his political foundation. Even without setting foot in a court of justice, his political career is effectively over. There's no need for us to pursue his downfall relentlessly. Ethan nodded, agreeing. Yes, and there are additional benefits to releasing him. He continued, an ancient emperor from the Dragon Kingdom once stated that a qualified leader must exhibit both compassion and ruthlessness. You've demonstrated your ruthlessness through the purge and the handling of Crouch Jr. Now it's time to show our compassionate side, and releasing Crouch is a direct way to do so. After all, even the most loyal subordinates appreciate a leader who shows humanity, Ethan added, prompting Gianna to look at him, slightly taken aback by his words. Yet, Tonks, Cirilla, and Penello all nodded in agreement, acknowledging that without Ethan's unique relationship with Gianna, they too would prefer a leader who embodies such qualities. Ethan's analysis didn't stop there. The recent purge has undoubtedly unsettled many within the Ministry of Magic. If not for the urgency, I would have advised against such a blunt approach, he admitted. We've likely made everyone in the ministry feel insecure, fearing they might be next. Continuing on this path would only attract more criticism. Releasing Crouch could help alleviate the tense atmosphere. He emphasized, showing leniency towards Crouch Sr. can be seen as adopting a moderate political stance, signaling to everyone that they need not worry, as we plan to halt the purges. This could also help us gain the trust of those on the fence, convincing them that our actions were truly aimed at cleansing the ministry's internal discipline, not purging dissenters. Do you think anyone will actually believe that? Gianna and the others were skeptical. Only Onyxia appeared contemplative. Of course, Ethan confidently asserted. If you think about it, everyone knows Crouch Sr. is Gianna's biggest political adversary. If Gianna were not acting in the public interest, why would she deal with so many individuals, yet spare her greatest foe? That's because I pity him, Gianna whispered. That's because there isn't enough evidence. Ethan exclaimed. The absence of sufficient evidence, even against political rivals, warrants their release. Doesn't this demonstrate Gianna's commitment to the public good? Ethan concluded, his tone laced with admiration, as Gianna blushed at his words. Ethan's logic was clear. Releasing Old Crouch due to a lack of concrete evidence could inversely prove their dedication to justice and the public interest, offering a nuanced perspective on their leadership approach. Others who were spared, those who were removed from their positions and sent to Azkaban, deserved it, Ethan stated matter-of-factly. How could he still think so? Gianna couldn't help but express her disbelief. So, we are really trying to eliminate corrupt elements and dark wizards this time? Are we not just trying to eliminate dissidents? Cirilla seemed to be convinced by Ethan's assurance. Of course, Ethan affirmed, as if it were an undeniable truth. But if that's the case, there's no need for us to be so rough? Hermione pointed out seriously. There's nothing we can do about it, Ethan responded with a helpless tone, waving his hand. I can only say that our overall intention is good, but the execution is a bit rough. But what can we do, right? After all, the situation is urgent, with so many Death Eaters suddenly invading Hogwarts. But those positions, Penello raised his hand and asked, are most of the vacant positions now occupied by officials from our faction? If we claim they are dedicated to serving the public, this result seems a bit unreasonable. Then you are still too young, Ethan sighed, adopting an old-fashioned tone. Please, in an emergency like that, even a politically strong and meritorious veteran like Old Crouch was suspected of colluding with the Death Eaters. How can we know who is trustworthy? What if we choose someone who is also a Death Eater? So, of course, we can only promote people we trust, just in case, right? Onyxia then replied. Yes, children can be taught. Ethan patted the female black dragon on the shoulder happily. So this is definitely not nepotism by Ms. Jaina. After hearing Ethan's reasoning, Gianna was greatly surprised. Hey, are there actually so many twists and turns here? She looked at Ethan as if she were looking at a marvel. I really don't understand how you, at such a young age, can think about things more carefully than me, an old civil servant. Ethan was also surprised. Why, don't you think so? Of course, that's not what I thought. Gianna admitted, a bit embarrassed. I just think, old Crouch doesn't have the ability to resist anyway. I see the shadow of my father in him. Mr. Dalen Proudmoore? Ethan mentioned the name. That's him. Gianna closed her eyes nostalgically, and after a moment, she continued. Once upon a time, Dalen treated my brother like this. He appeared stern, but behind the scenes, he cared about him silently. It's a pity that my brother, who was obviously a good person, was so unlucky and died in the war with the orcs. She paused and finally said, for the sake of him being a good father, I just thought of letting him go. Okay. What else could Ethan say? Then you have political talent. In fact, as the Princess of Kul Tiras and having worked in the Ministry of Magic for more than 10 years, Jaina's political skills were already very good. Otherwise, she would not have made it all the way to the powerful Deputy Director of the Department of Legal Enforcement. But facing Ethan, a former political leader who was familiar with 5,000 years of history, she still felt a little inferior. Ethan shook his head and looked at everyone present. Just pretend you didn't listen to what Gianna just said. Yes, everything is as I say. By the way, political gestures alone are not enough. Targeted propaganda is required. He looked at Onyxia. You are responsible for this matter. When the time comes, you will not only publicize Jaina's dedication to the public through the media, and the purge is just a last resort, but you will also spread the word in the Ministry of Magic. According to what I just said, we must make sure that everyone understands Jaina's difficulties. No problem. It's up to me, Master. Jaina agreed immediately, looking eager to give it a try. She felt that this little master was becoming more and more interesting to her. So, after everything was agreed upon, Jaina assumed such a posture in the trial court. And since it was a political show, it had to continue to the end. When Mr. Crouch was taken away by the Dementors, his back looked so lonely and helpless. In a moment of difficulty, Tonks extended a helping hand. She carefully untied the chains binding Mr. Crouch to the chair, her movements filled with respect and care. I will use my personal salary to ensure little Crouch is taken care of at St. Mungo's Hospital until you are released from prison. Please try to survive, she whispered into Mr. Crouch's ear. Mr. Crouch attempted to speak, but ultimately he simply nodded. He adjusted his hat and followed the Aurors out, his steps heavy, yet his posture upright. This poignant scene was discreetly observed and meticulously documented by a reporter from the Quibbler. Surely, this would be the highlight of their next few issues. The trial concluded, and the wizards began to disperse. Dumbledore and Miss Proudmoore lingered briefly to address the reporter's inquiries. As they awaited the elevator, its doors opened with a gentle tinkling sound, revealing the golden gates that parted slightly for them. Once inside, the elevator descended, and upon opening again, several wizards exited while a flurry of paper planes entered, circling Dumbledore's head. The peace of the magical world is on the brink of disruption, with Voldemort and his Death Eaters, and Jaina from the Ministry of Magic stirring unrest. The Order of the Phoenix must stand united, Dumbledore mused, concerned about the challenges that lay ahead with Voldemort's return. Headmaster Dumbledore, please inform Alastor Moody that once he recovers, his assistance with some documentation at the Ministry of Magic would be invaluable, Tonks interjected, catching Dumbledore off guard. Wasn't Alastor rescued by you? He asked, puzzled. Tonks shared his confusion, explaining, out of respect for you, Principal Dumbledore, we Aurors refrain from acting unless absolutely necessary. Since he entered Hogwarts Castle without permission, after Cyrilla apprehended Crouch Jr., she only informed Professor McGonagall of the incident and did not proceed with a rescue. It turned out that Alastor Moody had been inadvertently left in Crouch Jr.'s office for days, a grim oversight. Given that Crouch Jr. needed Moody's hair for the Polyjuice potion, his survival was, ironically, ensured. However, with Crouch Jr.'s arrest, Moody's predicament became dire. This darkly humorous situation led Tonks to suspect that Cyrilla might have intentionally neglected Moody as a form of revenge. She chose, however, not to share this speculation with Dumbledore. Deep in thought, Dumbledore reached into his robe, and a segment of phoenix tail feather peeked out, glowing softly. After a moment, it retracted into his sleeve. As the elevator reached the lobby, Dumbledore stepped out, and Fawkes appeared before him, spreading its magnificent wings. With a gentle stroke on Fawkes's back, Dumbledore vanished from the Ministry of Magic's hall, leaving behind a faint glow of firelight and warmth. The narrative then shifts to Giantuna, noted for her exceptional political acumen. Chapter 448. Tonight, we need to invite all the Ministry of Magic employees who follow us to a celebration party, Jaina announced upon returning to the tower. Ethan was lounging by the window, his gaze lost in the distant forest where nymphs frolicked by the water. At Jaina's words, he turned, offering a casual nod. "Oh? A celebration party? Sounds good. Just arrange it and make sure to call me when it's time. I'll be there." However, Jaina's tone remained serious, undeterred by Ethan's relaxed demeanor. "Ethan, this isn't just about whether you attend or not. You have an important task at this banquet." Ethan's smile faded, replaced by a slight frown. "A task? What kind of task? Surely, you're not expecting me to don a dress and play host with a goblet in hand? You know social gatherings aren't my forte. Wouldn't Penelope be better suited for this?" "Of course, I know. You're Ethan Green. I wouldn't assign you such a task," Jaina replied with a soft smile. "So what is my mission?" Ethan asked, curiosity piqued. "Your task is to deliver a speech on stage," Jaina revealed. "A speech?" Ethan was visibly surprised. "I'm not an employee of the Ministry of Magic. What good would speaking to them do? Aren't Tonks and Onyxia more suited for this?" "No, they're not as suitable as you," Jaina clarified, her vision clear. "You are the core among us. In the wizarding world, the political influence of a truly strong individual rivals that of a high-ranking politician. And you, Ethan, perfectly embody this role. Your reputation and academic achievements significantly bolster your influence. Your presence alone commands recognition." Jaina had everything planned and arrangements in place. "But how can I possibly write a speech in such short notice?" Ethan protested, not out of laziness but overwhelmed by the sudden responsibility. Jaina, knowing Ethan all too well, magically produced a piece of parchment, already prepared, and handed it to him. "Look, I was ready." Ethan's confusion turned to astonishment as he unfolded the parchment. Jaina had not only written the complete speech, but also meticulously annotated the tone and body movements for each sentence. Ethan couldn't help but admire her thoughtfulness and attention to detail. "Everything has been prepared for you. Now you have no excuse," Jaina said with a wink. Faced with such preparation, Ethan had no choice but to agree. "Okay, I understand. I'll do as you say tonight." That evening, Onyxia's manner was transformed, rivaling the solemn elegance of the Hogwarts Great Hall. The long table, draped with a beige tablecloth that nearly touched the grass, fluttered gently in the evening breeze, which also carried the scent of various flowers, most conjured by the flower demons invited for the occasion, throughout the garden, creating a serene and joyful atmosphere. Under the soft lighting, guests laughed and conversed freely, enjoying the relaxed and festive ambiance. Gwen and Oriana, the two maids, had been busy all day preparing a variety of foods and drinks. Delicacies rotated on the long table, allowing guests to indulge as they pleased, with plates magically replenishing whenever emptied. The banquet honored those Ministry of Magic officials who had collaborated with Jaina on a series of tasks during the Great Purge, including both Jaina's long-standing subordinates and newcomers who had joined their cause. Ethan performed outstandingly in the Bosho Society and joined it directly after graduation. Everyone gathered together, sharing delicious food and joy, celebrating their common victories. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 courses of food, the colorful lights on the field suddenly went out. A stage was raised at the front of the long table, and Jaina Proudmoore gracefully walked onto the stage in a beautiful blue robe. Standing under the spotlight, she smiled at everyone and said, "First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming. Thank you for your selfless contributions to the entire faction, and congratulations on receiving the rewards you deserve." As Jaina raised her goblet, everyone in the audience stood up, raised their glasses, celebrated the victory before them, and looked forward to the good times ahead. After everyone had drunk from their cups and the initial buzz of conversation had settled, Jaina's voice sounded again. "In this operation, not only did we successfully take over almost all valuable positions from the Crouch faction, but after consultation with Minister of Magic Fudge, we also achieved another major victory." She paused, her eyes slowly sweeping over the wizards in the audience, pleased to see their attention focused on her. She continued, I, Jaina Proudmoore, am now promoted to the rank of Director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement and am concurrently serving as Deputy Minister of Magic. As for our Minister Bones, she has become Director of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. As soon as Jaina finished speaking, the room burst into laughter. The use of the word also was particularly amusing, suggesting that the Department of International Magical Cooperation had become a place where the Department of Magical Law Enforcement sent its former ministers, first Lau K. Rauch, then Amelia Bones, with 2 successive ministers being reassigned there. Of course, the joke was just that, a joke. The reality was far from simple. And my closest friend, Miss Katrana Presto, Jaina continued, has been appointed Director of the Department for the Management and Control of Magical Creatures, tasked with hiding, caring for, and controlling all creatures living within the territory of the underworld. Magical beasts, creatures, and spirits. She gestured towards Katrana, who stood up and elegantly raised her glass to everyone. Then, another round of toasts followed. The Department for the Management and Control of Magical Creatures is the second largest department in the Ministry of Magic. This size refers to its scope, not necessarily its importance. However, securing the position of director of this department after the Great Purge was a significant achievement for Katrana and their entire faction. This was made possible by Jaina exchanging the position of director of the Department of International Magical Cooperation with Fudge. This maneuver was not widely understood by outsiders. Jaina only announced the above 2 positions, as the other promotions had already been confirmed at the end of the Great Purge. Only the director positions of these 2 departments required Fudge's approval, hence the announcement at this time. Thus, the 7 departments of the Ministry of Magic include the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes, the Department for the Management and Control of Magical Creatures, the Department of International Magical Cooperation, the Department of Magical Transportation, the Department of Magical Games and Sports, and the Department of Mysteries. Among these, the Department of Mysteries is solely responsible for secret research and operates independently from the other departments, with even the minister having no authority over its operations. It stands as an autonomous entity. With these changes, Jaina and her allies now control half of the 6 main departments. Jaina oversees the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, while Onyxia is in charge of the Department of Management and Control of Magical Creatures and the Department of Magical Sports under Ludo Bagman, have indeed become significant parts of the Ministry of Magic. Of course, some things come at a price. Jaina's tone suddenly turned serious. Therefore, we must remember that, according to the agreement with Minister Fudge, we must not disclose whether the Dark Lord has returned. This directive applies not only to the adults among us, but also to the young witches and wizards here at Hogwarts. Please be mindful of this. After speaking, her deep blue eyes swept over the faces of everyone present, ensuring her message was clearly understood. At this moment, her gaze landed on Ethan's table, where Hermione, Jiangqiu, Luna, and several other leaders of the Polyscientific Society were seated. Seeing them, her tone lightened once more. In the next school year, I hope you can guide the students of the Polyscientific Society to refrain from publicly discussing this matter. In return, Minister Fudge will endeavor to award you additional Order of Merlin third-class medals for your brave actions during the attack. Upon hearing this, the young wizards nodded in agreement, visibly pleased. Jaina Proudmoore observed the excited young wizards and thought to herself how easily children are satisfied. She was well aware that these third-class medals were not highly prestigious, considering even the charlatan Gilderoy Lockhart had received one. However, the real value lay in what was to come. But that's not all I have to announce today, she said with a slight smile, continuing. Next, I would like to introduce my dearest friend, my godbrother, and the president of the Erudite Society, Ethan Green. I believe everyone here is already familiar with him, so there's no need for me to go into great detail about his talents and accomplishments. I simply hope he continues to excel and meet all of our expectations. Moreover, Minister Fudge has agreed to award Ethan a new Order of Merlin, first-class medal for his significant contributions to protecting many during the disturbances. Miss Proudmoore's face beamed with pride and joy. She gave Ethan an encouraging look and then said, "Now, let us welcome Ethan Green with a warm round of applause and invite him to share a few words with us." Chapter 449. When Gianna loudly announced that Ethan was about to take the stage to speak, the atmosphere instantly reached its climax. The applause was like a flood, warm and enduring. It wasn't just the young wizards from the Erudite Society and recent Hogwarts graduates who were clapping eagerly. Many wizards who had served in the Ministry of Magic for years joined in, despite never having direct contact with Ethan. Gee, Ethan, does he really have that much influence in the Ministry of Magic? Fleur, dressed in a moon-white, bare-shouldered gown, sat elegantly next to Tonks. As Ethan's friend, she too was invited to the banquet and was visibly surprised by the reaction. Tonks, with a slight smile, leaned closer to Fleur and whispered, "Of course. After all, our opposition isn't just Fudge, but also Dumbledore. Ethan is the person we've introduced to rival Dumbledore in terms of influence." Fleur's eyes widened in surprise. To think of Dumbledore as an opponent was unexpected. After all, he was the revered wizard who had defeated 2 Dark Lords. Yet, upon reflection, it made sense. Dumbledore's literary prowess was renowned, and while Ethan's strength and achievements might not yet match Dumbledore's, his youth was a significant advantage. After all, by the age of 31, Dumbledore's accomplishments were not even a third of Ethan's. Amidst the anticipation, Ethan appeared on stage in the black and gold suit he had worn to the Christmas ball. He emerged from the void, stepping onto the stage in a manner that was both unique and eye-catching. Each step he took sent ripples through the air, igniting a wave of applause and cheers. "My classmates and colleagues from the Ministry of Magic, thank you for your applause," he began, his voice carrying across the room. "However, I believe this applause should not be for me, but for yourselves. Together, we saved Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic from Voldemort's dark schemes and the corruption of outdated bureaucracy." With a flourish of his wand, Ethan gestured towards the audience. "So, give yourselves a pat on the back." He led the applause, and the sound resonated through the air. The wizards in the audience joined in, their applause and cheers blending into a sea of joy. Everyone felt honored, and the applause lasted a full minute before gradually fading. Ethan then lowered his head, playing with his wand. He gently caressed one end, as if feeling the power within. Raising his head, he looked towards the Erudite Society, locking eyes with Hermione. "Some may think," Ethan's voice filled the silent room, "that we compromised with Fudge and the Appeasers for the sake of power, that we did not stand firm, did not dare to acknowledge Voldemort's return, and did not uphold our ideal of defending the wizarding world, that we feared Voldemort." Hermione silently lowered her head, warmth spreading in her heart. Ethan's words touched her deeply, dispelling her doubts. She had never voiced these concerns to Ethan, but she realized she wasn't as disappointed as she thought she would be when Ethan chose not to publicly acknowledge Voldemort's return. When had this change begun? She had always considered herself an idealistic person, yet now she questioned when she had started to compromise her ideals for someone else. She never wanted to be like Bellatrix, whose love was so intense it bordered on madness, even fearing rejection by Voldemort. Hermione had always seen herself as rational, but Ethan's words made her wonder if she too could love with such intensity, even if it meant making sacrifices. Bellatrix, a woman of fierce loyalty, would have readily managed the Death Eaters for Ethan if he had shown any inclination towards becoming a figure like Voldemort. However, Ethan did not align with her expectations. He understood her, saw through her inner turmoil, and was ready to publicly provide her with answers. "I want to say," Ethan began, positioning his hands behind his back, his voice resonating with authority, "their ideas are commendable, but they overestimate Voldemort." He paused, seemingly searching for the right words. "Defeating Voldemort should not be our ultimate goal. He is merely a minor obstacle. He is not as formidable as you believe. Your potential, however, exceeds your wildest dreams." The audience fell into a hushed silence, captivated by Ethan's unconventional perspective. "Look at the Erudite Society. Look at our new aurors, Ethan continued, his voice rising with excitement. I have developed a new magical framework, challenging the entire existing theory of magic. The heights that arcane magic can reach are far beyond your imagination. With this new theory, we hold the future of this world in our hands. Ethan raised his hand, and a surge of magical power erupted from his wand, pointing towards the vast, endless sky. Suddenly, thunder roared, and strong winds howled, transforming the previously serene night into a tempest of dark, ominous clouds. However, with another wave of his wand, the storm calmed, and the lightning ceased as if tamed. The dark clouds scattered, revealing the bright stars and the clear night sky once more. Peace returned, making the recent turmoil seem like a mere illusion. This astonishing display of power was confined to a few kilometers radius. Control the weather. With the 7-ring change system, you can alter the local weather, creating conditions that match the local climate and seasons. The wizards present realized they had witnessed weather control magic. While history might recall wizards capable of such feats, none had demonstrated the ability to manipulate the weather with such ease as Ethan. The crowd of over 600 wizards erupted into cheers. This is the power of arcane magic. Ethan's voice boomed across the night. My power will also be your power. This force will revolutionize the magical world, and the change starts with us. The cheers resonated, wave after wave. Ethan's speech and the demonstration of real magic deeply moved the wizards. They envisioned the dawn of a new magical era. Ethan surveyed the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them. He nodded in satisfaction and declared, "The time for change has arrived. The ancient order, unchanged for millennia, is on the brink of transformation. Are you ready to witness this historic moment with me?" "Willing," a voice shouted. "We do." More voices joined, merging into a powerful chorus. "Mr. Ethan, lead us to change the world." People rose, their voices unified. They now understood the path ahead and the reason behind their high-ranking positions within the Ministry of Magic. If Jaina was their practical leader, guiding them towards continuous progress, Ethan was their beacon, illuminating the profound significance of their endeavors. They were not merely seeking personal glory or a better future for themselves. Their struggle was for the future of the entire wizarding world. Chapter 450. During a semester marked by a significant event, an attack by Death Eaters resulted in numerous injuries among the young wizards, with many being harmed by stray spells. This incident led the students to believe that the final exams might be cancelled, offering them a moment of respite. Contrary to their expectations, the professors announced that the exams would merely be postponed and made more challenging to enhance the students' magical abilities. This decision sparked widespread dismay among the students, who, despite their grievances, resolved to dedicate themselves to rigorous study. The question of who would replace Moody as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, given his exposure as Crouch Jr., and subsequent punishment with the Dementor's kiss, was a source of concern. Neville voiced this worry, prompting Harry to suggest Ethan as a potential candidate. He reminded them of Ethan's temporary role following Professor Lockhart's mishap, highlighting his extensive knowledge and experience. Ron, however, expressed skepticism about Ethan's suitability for the role, recalling his formidable display against numerous Death Eaters. Ethan's confrontation had resulted in significant casualties among the attackers, with his use of powerful gravity magic leaving one embedded in the floor, a scene so gruesome that traditional aurors struggled to manage it. Despite their efforts with various spells, they resorted to manually excavating the body, a task that took hours and left a lasting mark on the floor. Wizarding battles, typically less bloody than their Muggle counterparts due to the controlled nature of magic, rarely result in such fatalities. Spells like the Disarming Curse, Stunning Spell, and Confinement Curse are designed to subdue rather than kill. Ethan's encounter, however, deviated from this norm, with his non-dark magic approach resulting in a high death toll among his enemies, a rarity outside of dark wizard confrontations. This incident led some aurors, led by Kingsley, to speculate that the cruelty of the dark wizard Sorella could be attributed to Ethan's influence in an attempt to tarnish his reputation and indirectly affect Jaina's family. However, they overlooked the perspective of those directly affected by the chaos, who had suffered injuries or fallen under the imperious curse. For them, and many others desiring the downfall of Death Eaters, Ethan's actions were not only justified but commendable, reflecting a widespread desire for retribution against their attackers. They could only express gratitude and praise for Ethan's decisive actions. Harry had previously heard complaints about Ethan from Kingsley, but having nearly lost his own life to Voldemort, Harry felt a subconscious sense of happiness upon hearing about Ethan's deeds. Thus, when Ron voiced his dissatisfaction with Ethan, Harry initially wanted to argue in Ethan's defense. However, recalling Ron's transformation into Rony, Harry found his perception of Ron beginning to merge with the image of Rony, making him hesitant to engage in a significant conflict with Ron. Upon entering the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, they were greeted by a familiar figure at the podium. Harry, filled with excitement, hurried forward, joined by the eager Gryffindor students who gathered around Professor Remus John Lupin. Lupin, looking healthier and better dressed than when they first met, welcomed each student with a warm smile and a hug. Thanks to Ethan and Jaina's help, Sirius had been cleared of all charges and could openly claim the Black family inheritance, significantly improving Lupin's living conditions. Grateful for this change, Lupin accepted Dumbledore's invitation to temporarily teach Defense Against the Dark Arts, eager to share his knowledge with the young wizards. After class, Lupin invited Harry to his office for a private conversation. The office had changed. The large box belonging to Professor Moody was gone, as if it had never existed, yet the mysterious demon mirror still hung on the wall, silently observing all who entered. Lupin, while preparing tea, mentioned that Moody was still recovering in the school hospital and unable to use apparition due to his frail condition. "Harry, this is for you," Lupin said, handing Harry a piece of attractively colored chocolate from Honeydukes, a sweet reminder of their first meeting. Harry cherished this gesture, feeling a deeper connection to Lupin and Sirius than to his own family with the Dursleys. Lupin expressed concern about Sirius's dissatisfaction with Dumbledore's decision to involve Harry in dangerous situations. He suggested Harry try to reassure Sirius that facing risks was necessary to defeat Voldemort. Besides the pressure of final exams, Harry was now focused on joining the Order of the Phoenix, an organization dedicated to fighting Voldemort, giving him a clear purpose amidst the challenges he faced. To achieve his goal, Ethan would position himself at the auditorium's entrance after brunch every day. Upon Dumbledore's arrival, Ethan would promptly greet him. Dumbledore quickly took notice of Ethan's determination and persistence. Confronted with the steadfastness of this young Gryffindor, he felt compelled to take it seriously. Thus, when Ethan intercepted him once more, Dumbledore regarded him with a serious demeanor and inquired, "Ethan, the exams are imminent. Are you confident in securing an O in every subject?" This question troubled Ethan. It caught him somewhat off guard. He was keen to share his thoughts, but was at a loss for words on how to broach the subject of the Order of the Phoenix in a public setting like the auditorium. Consequently, he turned red and stammered, "Professor, I believe at this juncture I should be more focused on the Dark Lord's activities." Observing the young wizards congregating around, Dumbledore's expression shifted. He adopted a grave tone and posed a question. "Do you understand how to prepare for the exams? What do you think will happen if you don't review thoroughly?" This query sparked curiosity among the Hogwarts students. They exchanged glances, nudged each other, and crowded forward, exclaiming, "What will happen?" In that moment, Dumbledore bellowed, "You shall not pass." The words had barely left his mouth before the young wizards erupted into laughter. The resemblance between Dumbledore and Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings had not gone unnoticed among many fans of the books. Indeed, the wizarding world was not devoid of Muggle book publishing. Muggle fantasy novels about magical worlds, such as The Lord of the Rings, enjoyed considerable popularity among the youth. Seeing the students' reaction, Dumbledore's sapphire blue eyes, visible behind his crescent-shaped glasses, twinkled with amusement. He had successfully shifted the students' focus, helping them to relax during a period of heightened tension. Today's fourth update serves as a compensation for the missed update yesterday. Chapter 451. One afternoon, A week before the holiday, the young wizards at Hogwarts were informed during their last class that a grand awards ceremony and celebration would be held in the Great Hall that evening. Upon entering the auditorium, they immediately noticed the transformation from its usual decor. The ribbons, balloons, and flags that typically adorned the space were absent, replaced by an arrangement of green, purple, and white ribbons. This combination of colors bathed the entire auditorium in a mysterious and solemn atmosphere, seemingly foreshadowing the significance of the evening's ceremony. Among those most eager for the event were the young wizards from the Knowledge Society, who were about to receive medals. They had dressed neatly, hoping to create lasting memories on this special night. Colin, a fervent admirer of Harry and a photography enthusiast, found himself receiving an unprecedented level of attention. Normally, he felt invisible at school, barely acknowledged by a few of his more accomplished peers. However, today, many of the school's top students and influential figures, who usually seemed out of reach, gathered around him, treating him with unexpected kindness. Their motive was simple. They wanted him to capture their moment of glory on stage. Flattered, Colin eagerly took several photos. As Ethan slowly walked down the aisle, many young wizards stood to shake hands with him. He responded with a smile and a nod, engaging in gentle conversation with those who greeted him. Despite being just another student entering the auditorium, his demeanor was that of a leader making an inspection. Soon after, Dumbledore arrived, and the chatter in the auditorium gradually quieted down. "Good evening," Dumbledore greeted everyone with his trademark gentle smile. "Before we indulge in these delicious dishes, I have some good news to share with you." No sooner had he finished speaking than the door of the auditorium was forcefully opened, and Minister of Magic Fudge, accompanied by Tonks and several Aurors, strode in. Dumbledore and Fudge exchanged a tight hug, a gesture that seemed to reassure everyone of their mutual trust. Fudge then solemnly handed a scroll of parchment to Dumbledore. Unfolding the parchment, Dumbledore's eyes quickly scanned the document, a delighted smile spreading across his face. He looked up, surveyed the room, and announced, "First, I would like to invite Hermione Granger, Zhang Chu, Luna Lovegood, Ginny Weasley, Padma Patil, Draco Malfoy, these students to the stage." As the named students lined up, Dumbledore addressed the puzzled audience. "This is an award from the Ministry of Magic. When faced with a sudden attack by the Death Eaters, these students not only united in calm and bravery, but also demonstrated courage, confidence, and wisdom. They successfully fought against the Death Eaters, protecting not just Hogwarts, but also the students of Beauxbatons. Consequently, the Ministry of Magic has decided to award them the Order of Merlin, 3rd class." The announcement was met with deafening cheers from the young wizards at Hogwarts. Even the students from Durmstrang and Beauxbatons joined in the applause, with the latter expressing their newfound affection for Hogwarts. The stars above seemed to shimmer slightly, as if in recognition of the honor being bestowed. The awarding of the Order of Merlin, 3rd class, to so many students at once was unprecedented. Dumbledore raised his hand, calling for silence. As the auditorium quieted down, the only sound was the excited heartbeats of those present. "I personally think they are very outstanding," Dumbledore continued. Hogwarts decided to reward them, adding 50 points to the house of each medalist. This announcement ignited cheers, especially from the Ravenclaw table, where the noise was deafening. The little wizards of Ravenclaw, known for their erudition, boasted the highest number of medalists. Even without these additional points, Ravenclaw was already poised to secure first place in the House Cup. When Fudge saw, Manley presented Hermione with the last 3rd-class medal, adorned with a shining white ribbon. Thunderous applause erupted once again. Hermione's performance in the Tri-Wizard tournament and her leadership in the Erudite Society, saving her classmates, made her the most deserving of the medal. Remarkably, amidst the Tri-Wizard tournament, she also aced her 4th-grade exams, achieving O grades in all 12 subjects. Since Ethan was exempt from the exams this year, Hermione topped her grade for the first time. Ron, sitting among the audience, watched Hermione on the stage, grumbling, "The Sorting Hat must have made a mistake. Hermione seems like she should be in Ravenclaw." His tone carried a hint of jealousy, noting her love for reading, excellent grades, and affinity with the weirdos in Ravenclaw. She's not as enthusiastic about our Gryffindor classmates, he added, causing a stir among the Gryffindors. Some agreed, while others frowned, reflecting a mixed sentiment towards Hermione. Moreover, she can even command Malfoy. After all the insults, she still manages to smile at Malfoy's detestable face, Ron continued, his words resonating with the Gryffindors. Despite Hermione's reputation, no one openly agreed with Ron, yet no one refuted him either. This silence signified a subtle consensus on their views about Hermione. The Erudite Society had the fewest Gryffindors, leading to Gryffindor's loss in the collective bonus points and being surpassed by Hufflepuff, a significant blow to their pride. Next, I want to mention Ethan Green. Dumbledore's voice filled the Great Hall, bringing an immediate hush over the audience. With his fearless courage, extraordinary bravery, and outstanding strength, he single-handedly repelled dozens of Death Eaters and saved many innocent lives. For this, Sir Merlin has decided to award Ethan Green a first-class medal. Dumbledore also announced an additional 60 points for Ravenclaw House. The Ravenclaw table erupted in cheers, led by Steve, Kevin, and others, who stood up and cheered loudly. Their joy and pride were palpable, spreading throughout the hall as nearly all the young wizards stood to applaud Ethan, the most distinguished student in Hogwarts' history. Ethan, with a calm demeanor and a faint smile, ascended the platform to receive the first-class medal from Fudge. The green ribbon, symbolizing Merlin's Slytherin house, was now proudly worn by a Ravenclaw wizard, symbolizing a moment of unity and pride across the houses. Ethan's sorting into Ravenclaw was a moment of intrigue, not just for the members of his own house, but across the entire spectrum of Hogwarts houses. Interestingly, Slytherin House, known for its emphasis on pure-blood lineage, did not express the expected dissatisfaction with Ethan's Muggle origins. Instead, Slytherin was the second most enthusiastic house about him. This reaction can be attributed to the fact that, although there are many purists within Slytherin, a larger portion of its members are Darwinists who value strength above all. As Ethan began to demonstrate his remarkable abilities, an increasing number of Slytherin students started to respect and follow him, embracing the concept of merit over lineage. I would like to take this opportunity to ask for your support. Custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, reviews, and rewards are all greatly appreciated. If you have any tickets, I, as the author, would be deeply grateful if you could share them with me. Your support is incredibly important to me. Chapter 452. After enjoying a delicious celebratory meal, the young wizards took out the latest version of the chocolate frog. These were not just any dessert, they were unique collectibles. Each chocolate frog came with a card featuring the portrait of a famous wizard, and many of the young wizards were eager to collect these cards. This time, however, there was a particular card that everyone was excited about. Ron, who had always been fond of collecting these cards, had amassed over 500 of them, covering almost all the famous wizards. He thought he had collected them all until he saw the card that Dennis Creevey, Colin Creevey's younger brother and a first-year student, had just pulled out. "Hello, can you give me that card? It's the only one I'm missing. I can exchange it with you for other cards," Ron asked, his voice dry with eagerness. Dennis looked into Ron's hopeful eyes and nodded. "That's fine, but I want one of Dumbledore's," he said, pushing the card towards Ron. Ron's gaze fixed on the card on the table. In the picture, Ethan Green was dressed in a black and gold suit, his gentle smile directed at Ron. Under the overhead lights, Ethan's black hair and deep eyes seemed to shimmer. Ron felt an inexplicable annoyance, as if the charm emanating from Ethan's picture was irresistible. With a snap, Ron flipped the card over, hiding Ethan's face against the table. However, the words on the back of the card stung him anew. Ethan Green, currently studying at Hogwarts, has been awarded the Order of Merlin First Class twice, is an inventor of spells, a master of animagus, and is recognized as one of the best chaser combinations in the modern era. Ethan's notable contributions include inventing the magical animagus, eradicating dangerous magical creatures numerous times, defeating dozens of dark wizards single-handedly, and saving the lives of countless muggles and wizards. Ron quickly turned the card face down and pushed it towards the center of the table, as if trying to distance himself from it. Yet, knowing this was the last card he needed to complete his collection, He couldn't resist picking it up again. After a moment's hesitation, Ron decided to keep the card, slipping it into his pocket. The end of the banquet did not signify the end of the celebrations. As the award ceremony for the Order of Merlin concluded, Principal Dumbledore waved his wand, transforming the decorations with a gust of wind. The smoke cleared to reveal blue and copper decorations representing Ravenclaw House, lighting up the entire auditorium in celebration of their House Cup victory. A huge banner featuring the Ravenclaw eagle hung behind the guest seat. Dumbledore then officially announced that Ravenclaw had won the Academy Champions Cup once again. Applause and cheers filled the air, with the young wizards of Ravenclaw basking in pride and joy, their victory celebrated under the envious gazes of other houses. However, for Ravenclaw, winning the House Cup had become a routine achievement. In their eyes, losing the crown would have been more noteworthy. After the applause died down, Dumbledore's tone turned solemn. Another year has passed, and I must say, Ravenclaw has performed admirably. However, I must remind everyone of a grave matter. Voldemort is back. A murmur spread through the auditorium, gradually falling silent. Although this was not the first time Dumbledore had announced Voldemort's return, the news was met with skepticism. Despite Dumbledore's reputation, the reality of Voldemort's return was a hard pill to swallow. The greatest white wizard in history, Dumbledore, revealed information that was too shocking for many to believe, without sufficient reasons and conclusive evidence. Except for a few die-hard believers, almost no one was willing to accept this disturbing news. "The Ministry doesn't want me to tell you this," Dumbledore said in a deep voice, his gaze sweeping across the auditorium, meeting the eyes of every young wizard present. "I understand that some parents may be shocked by my actions. They may not be able to accept that Voldemort is truly back, or they may think that I should not burden your young shoulders with this truth. But please believe me, I firmly believe that the truth is far more powerful than lies. Concealing it could lead us to pay a greater price when a crisis strikes unexpectedly." Various expressions were evident on the young faces in the auditorium. Neville looked pale, burdened by the pressure. Harry's eyes flashed with anger, filled with hostility towards Voldemort's return. Ethan's face was expressionless, as if he had anticipated all of this, and the core members of the Erudite Society appeared calm, obviously prepared to face the situation. Dumbledore took a deep breath and continued, "When we talk about Voldemort, we cannot overlook another important name, Harry Potter." A slight commotion arose in the auditorium as several students turned their heads to look at Harry curiously before quickly refocusing on Dumbledore. Harry Potter escaped from Voldemort's clutches. He has faced life and death, but has never succumbed to darkness. Before he could finish his praise, Dumbledore added, "Of course, it's not just Harry we have to thank. In the fight against Voldemort, many others showed extraordinary courage. They faced evil without flinching, a spirit that is extremely rare in the wizarding world. For this, I would like to pay them my deepest respect." Dumbledore's gaze first landed on Ethan, then shifted to Hermione and others, before finally raising his goblet. Almost everyone in the auditorium followed suit, and the young wizards of the Erudite Society stood up proudly. After everyone had put down their glasses, Dumbledore spoke again. "I believe the Triwizard Tournament is not just a grand competition, but also an important platform for our magical community to enhance understanding and promote communication. In light of Voldemort's resurrection, this communication and unity are more important than ever." Dumbledore's eyes slowly swept across the auditorium, observing the varied reactions. Madame Maxime and Hagrid showed worry and heaviness. Karkaroff, pretending to be calm, could not hide his panic. The young Beauxbaton students, led by Fleur Delacour, appeared confused and unaware of the real threat Voldemort posed, and Victor Krum and his Durmstrang classmates looked very nervous, almost scared. However, Dumbledore's message was one of unity and openness. "Every guest in this auditorium, no matter where you come from, the door of Hogwarts is always open for you," he said with a gentle and sincere tone. "Under the threat of Voldemort, we can only defeat the darkness if we unite. If we are divided, we will be vulnerable. Voldemort is a master of conflict and enmity, but we must counter him with unbreakable friendship and trust. As long as we have the same goal and an open mind, differences in habits and language will not be obstacles. I believe, and I truly hope I'm mistaken, that we are all going to face dark and challenging times ahead. But remember, together, we have the strength to overcome anything. Dumbledore's voice was tinged with deep concern as he spoke. In fact, you have already endured the harrowing experience of being targeted by Voldemort's followers. Many of your families have been shattered by these events. Just a week ago, one of our own classmates narrowly escaped death at the hands of Voldemort. Yet, despite these daunting challenges, we must not lose hope. It is imperative that we stand united, for together there is nothing that can halt our progress. Chapter 453. A Peculiar Silence at Hogwarts. During our final days at Hogwarts, the weather was exceptionally pleasant. The sun bathed the lawns in warmth. A gentle breeze swept across the lake, and with no classes or exams on the horizon, it should have been an ideal time for young wizards to relax and revel in their freedom. Yet, oddly enough, the usual laughter and chatter among the students were conspicuously absent. Instead, they all seemed preoccupied, rushing about without a moment to appreciate the beautiful surroundings. This unusual behavior was strikingly abnormal. Harry noticed that some students would even deliberately avoid him. When he inquired about this strange behavior, Ethan provided an explanation, a warning from their parents. The night before, while conversing with Ethan, Iwu had brought up an odd occurrence she'd noticed around the school. Do you know? Recently, when I was wandering around the school, I observed a peculiar phenomenon, Iwu mentioned, her voice tinged with mystery. Oh, what kind of phenomenon? Ethan asked, his curiosity piqued as he absent-mindedly played with her slender tail. A large number of owls have been flying from outside the castle to the tallest tower. When I flew closer, I could even make out the faint sound of scolding emanating from the building, Iwu whispered. Ethan furrowed his brow, pondering for a moment before responding. 697. Isn't that the direction of the headmaster's office? You know what's happening, right? Iwu's face was a mix of fear and excitement. I'm guessing there's a female ghost cursed by an owl, or maybe a harpy or something. In fact, it's because Dumbledore received a howler from a student's parents, Ethan clarified. A howler? But why? Iwu asked, genuinely puzzled. I thought the old man with the white beard was quite popular. The situation is complex, Ethan sighed, his assessment of the current state of the wizarding world in the United Kingdom spot on. The prevailing sentiment was one of appeasement, with many preferring to bury their heads in the sand rather than confront the reality of Voldemort's return. Consequently, Dumbledore's public acknowledgement of this fact did not sit well with many parents, some of whom refused to believe in the Dark Lord's resurrection. This disbelief was inevitably passed down to their children. In contrast to the prevailing mood, George and Fred decided to go against the grain. They launched a promotional sale, offering all joke products at a 20% discount in a bold attempt to inject some life back into Hogwarts. However, to Ethan, it seemed more like an effort to clear out their inventory before graduating. Time swiftly passed, and soon it was time to leave Hogwarts. The morning sun streamed through the dormitory windows as Ethan rose early to pack his belongings. Afterward, he joined the girls for breakfast in the Great Hall. Passing the Gryffindor table, he overheard an argument between Seamus and Ron. The Dark Lord wasn't resurrected at all. These are all Dumbledore's lies, Seamus exclaimed, brandishing his fork with fervor. I believe Harry. He's my friend, and he wouldn't lie, Ron countered, standing his ground. Harry merely shrugged. If they don't want to believe it, let them be. They'll regret it when the Dark Lord stands before them. The day also marked the departure of the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang students. Outside the castle, a lavishly decorated carriage awaited the Beauxbatons' teachers and students. After breakfast, Ethan and Hermione went to bid farewell to Fleur. Approaching, they noticed Hagrid and Madame Maxime engaged in a cheerful conversation. It seems you two have made up? Ethan inquired, intrigued by their amicable interaction. Oh, Olympa and I were never truly at odds, Hagrid replied, his face beaming with joy and contentment. Hermione, standing to the side, remembered Hagrid's previous distress and her attempts to console him. With a hint of amusement, she interjected, That's not what you said before. Hagrid responded with a hail, Erdy laughed, scratching the back of his head in a gesture of sheepish acknowledgement. In embarrassment, Ethan confessed, "That's because I'm so sad. Men are always at a disadvantage when it comes to relationships. I'm too fragile, too emotional, too easily hurt." As he spoke, he gazed at Madame Maxime with adoration, as if she were the most important person in his life. Ethan and Hermione were left speechless. Was he the only one who felt easily injured? The flora and fauna of the Forbidden Forest, and the ferocious creatures Hagrid affectionately called little cuties, would likely disagree. This was the first time they had witnessed someone articulate their post-breakup frustration in such a polished manner. "Olympe, let me handle the heavy lifting. You should rest," Hagrid called out, rushing over to assist Madame Maxime with the carriage horses. His tone was laden with protectiveness and affection, treating Madame Maxime as though she were a delicate child in need of care. Of course, Madame Maxime was far from a little girl. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with a robust physique, a single punch from her could easily flatten an average wizard. Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how everyone around him seemed so devoted in love. Harry, Crumb, Snape, and now Hagrid. "Hi, Ethan," Fleur greeted him cheerfully. Stepping down from the carriage with grace, she extended her hand, which was as delicate as a piece of art, and shook hands with Ethan. Dressed elegantly, her long skirt accentuated her graceful figure, swaying gently with each step. Her slender waist and curvaceous figure were highlighted under the skirt, embodying the unique charm and elegance of French women. Ethan's eyes lingered on Fleur, filled with admiration and awe. Despite her simple attire, Fleur's proud figure and natural charisma were undeniable. "This trip to Hogwarts has been truly rewarding, thanks to your guidance," Fleur expressed in her melodious French, her blue eyes sparkling with sincerity and gratitude. "I've learned so much and even secured the runner-up position in the True Wizard tournament, all thanks to you." Ethan shook his head modestly and replied with a smile. "You're too kind, Fleur. Your achievements are the result of your own hard work and talent. Anyone else in my place might not have helped you achieve such success." As they shook hands, Fleur gave Ethan's palm a slight squeeze and a playful tickle, hinting at something with a sly smile. "Are you leaving so soon?" Luna, Ginny, and Astoria also came to bid farewell to Gabrielle, their voices filled with reluctance. "Will you visit Hogwarts again?" "Yes, we'll be leaving soon," Fleur nodded, her fingers playfully twirling a strand of her bright silver hair. "I've graduated from Beauxbatons and might look for a job in the wizarding world. I've always enjoyed it here and hope to improve my English. Ethan, since you're close with Miss Proudmoore, perhaps you could help me find a job." Fleur's voice was sweet and enticing, her red lips parting slightly with each word, carrying a magical allure and a hint of flirtation. At that moment, Hermione stepped forward, positioning herself between Fleur and Ethan. "That's a great idea, Fleur," she said with a smile, though her tone carried a subtle hint of rejection. "However, I suggest you stay away from England for a while. It might be safer to wait a few years before returning." Hermione's words came as a surprise. Fleur quickly regained her composure and walked forward, embracing Hermione tightly. "Oh, Hermione, you are both a wonderful rival and a wonderful friend," Fleur said with enthusiasm. "I will never forget you in this life." Hermione was taken aback by Fleur's sudden embrace and found herself momentarily at a loss. Fleur rested her head on Hermione's shoulder and stealthily winked at Ethan from an angle Hermione couldn't see. Clearly, Fleur had done this deliberately. However, Hermione, ever the gentle soul, failed to notice this. Overwhelmed by Fleur's embrace and kind words, Hermione's initial competitiveness faded away. After releasing Hermione, Fleur's expression turned to one of slight confusion. "Why do you want to persuade me not to come to England? Just because of that mysterious man?" she asked, her eyebrows raised slightly, betraying a hint of imperceptible arrogance in her tone. "You people from Britain may be afraid of him, but we French will not back down so easily." Fleur, having grown up in France, was familiar with Voldemort's fearsome reputation and knew he was a powerful and cruel wizard. However, to her, he was nothing more than a distant legend. She believed that with enough caution, she could avoid any conflict with him. This belief highlighted her naivety regarding the true terror Voldemort represented. Chapter 454. After dealing with Hermione, Fleur suddenly stood up on her tiptoes, leaned close to Ethan's ear, and whispered softly, a voice meant only for the two of them. "Do you have anything to say about what she said? Or would you prefer I stay away from England, just to stop seeing me?" Her breath gently caressed Ethan's ear, eliciting a ticklish sensation. Ethan felt a warmth in his ears, and his heartbeat quickened involuntarily. Fleur's proximity, along with the faint fragrance emanating from her, stirred an inexplicable excitement within him. As they parted, Fleur seemed to grow bolder. "Hermione is right. Voldemort is indeed very dangerous, but trust me, I can protect you, as long as you're willing to come." Ethan, of course, would not disappoint her. Seeing the promise in Ethan's eyes, a flash of joy sparkled in Fleur's. She smiled softly. "Then it's settled. I'll also need your help with work matters." "No problem at all," Ethan nodded. "I promise to find you a high-paying and respectable job, though it may pose a bit of a challenge." "Challenge?" Fleur's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I love challenging jobs the most. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen you." She winked ambiguously. "Then it's settled." "A word is settled," Ethan repeated. Hermione, standing to the side, crossed her arms and glared at the pair, chatting and laughing. She was deeply dissatisfied with her earlier performance. How could she have let Fleur get the better of her? This cunning vixen. At that moment, Harry and Ron also hurried down the steps. After witnessing the scene, they approached to bid farewell to Fleur. "We will meet again soon," Fleur said, her long silver hair cascading like a waterfall as she flashed a bright smile at Harry. "I've found a job in the Yin Kingdom, and it looks like my English will improve soon." Ron, trying to sound sophisticated, immediately chimed in. "Your English is already great." Fleur internally cringed at the flattery, but maintained a graceful exterior, expressing her gratitude. "This is all thanks to Mr. Green's help. Without him, I wouldn't have secured this job." Ron's face flushed, as if he had swallowed a ripe apple that was now stuck in his throat. He coughed awkwardly, attempting to mask his embarrassment. Fleur felt a surge of pride. She knew exactly how to handle these annoying suitors. Yet, she felt it wasn't enough. "Okay, it's time for me to go," she announced, then stood on her tiptoes again and gently kissed Ethan on the lips. Her soft lips left a lingering warmth on his skin. Hermione and Ron's expressions soured simultaneously. Meanwhile, Gabrielle, having said goodbye to her friends, ran over. Witnessing her sister's actions, her eyes sparkled with admiration, and she too aimed to give Ethan a farewell kiss. Ethan, striving for fairness, accepted, but subtly changed the kiss to one on the cheek. He then watched the Delacour sisters dash across the lawn towards Madame Maxime. Under the sunlight, their silver hair shimmered like waves, lifting his spirits. The Beauxbatons students began boarding their carriage, preparing for departure. Suddenly, a loud neighing filled the air. 12 silver-maned winged horses reared, their manes fluttering as they vigorously flapped their wings, pulling the magnificent carriage into the sky. The carriage ascended slowly, eventually shrinking to a dot and vanishing into the clouds. Shortly after, Victor Krum approached Hermione. "May I have a word with you?" he asked. Hermione glanced at Ethan, then subtly stepped in front of him, positioning herself between them. "It depends on his opinion," she said calmly. Ethan shrugged slightly, indicating that he didn't mind. "You are about to part ways anyway, so it doesn't matter if we chat for a few words," he said. "It just so happens that I'm going to have a chat with Mr. Karkaroff." As he said that, he winked at Hermione and then strode away. Krum's mood was weighed down by Hermione's indifferent attitude, but he still mustered up the courage to approach her. However, when he finally stood in front of Hermione, his throat seemed to be blocked by something. He opened his mouth, but couldn't form a complete sentence for a long time. Hermione maintained a vigilant posture, with her arms crossed, as if to say, "If you don't speak, I won't." "Hermione, I hope I can see you again in the future," Krum finally managed to say, his voice hoarse and low. Hearing this, Hermione raised her head slightly, looking over Krum's shoulder at Ethan, who was talking to Karkaroff not far away. Although Ethan was engaged in conversation, his eyes kept glancing towards her, looking nervous. Hermione could tell that he was doing it entirely on purpose, but this feeling of being cared for still made her heart warm, and the dissatisfaction she felt because of Fleur disappeared instantly, even bringing a smile to her face. Feeling uplifted, Hermione took the initiative to reach out to Krum. This move surprised and delighted him, and he quickly grasped her hand. However, the words that followed were unexpectedly firm. "I wish you can find happiness that truly belongs to you," she said with a smile, her voice gentle and sincere. But to Krum, it sounded like a farewell. He had no choice but to nod, taking a deep look at Hermione. "So goodbye, Hermione," he said, calling her name accurately for the first time. At that moment, Ron shifted uncomfortably. His expression was a mix of pain and entanglement, as if he was enduring some kind of inner conflict. Suddenly, Ron's gaze met Krum's, and after a few awkward seconds, he looked away. Then, Malfoy's sharp and sarcastic voice cut through the air. "What's wrong, Weasley? Can't bear to say goodbye to your lover?" "He and I are not lovers," Ron retorted, furious, nearly starting another fight with Malfoy. Krum took this opportunity to leave the uncomfortable situation. Before leaving, he glanced at Harry, as if wanting to ask him something about Ron, but ultimately decided against it, and silently turned to leave. This trip to Hogwarts had been an emotional roller coaster for him. For the first time, he realized that even a Quidditch star like himself couldn't win over the girl he wanted. Krum felt that he had exhausted all his passion and courage, and that he would no longer pursue love. Meanwhile, Ethan's conversation with Karkaroff was concluding. They stood in a secluded corner, with Ethan seriously outlining his future plans. "Next semester, we will work hard to promote exchanges and cooperation with Durmstrang, and then we can legitimately support you. Until then, you're on your own, Ms. Rowena." Karkaroff smiled slightly, responding in an elegant yet magnetic female voice. "Don't worry, Master Ethan. I am from Ravenclaw." When they returned to King's Cross Station, the sky was clear, and the sun shone warmly and brightly. Ethan, Hermione, Luna, and Ginny walked together to the front of the train, where Cho Chang's prefect's compartment was located. Cho had prepared a lot of snacks and welcomed them enthusiastically. Even the shadow of Voldemort's return couldn't dampen her recent good mood. With Ethan's help, she had successfully achieved all 12 OWL certificates, all with outstanding grades. She and Hermione had become close friends, sharing in each other's academic successes. Top students in the 4th and 5th grades respectively, Ethan addressed the girls as the train neared its station. "This summer vacation, you should try your best to find time. We are going to conduct special combat training," he announced. "Voldemort is indeed back, and this is a fact we cannot ignore. To face this challenge, we must enhance our combat experience and strengthen ourselves." As he spoke, Ethan unwrapped a chocolate frog and popped it into his mouth. A card fell out of the package, prompting him to look down and laugh. Surprisingly, the card bore his own portrait. Glancing up, he noticed Hermione watching him in silence. Taking the initiative, he explained, "Principal Dumbledore's plan involves pushing Harry to the forefront to fulfill the so-called prophecy. However, we can use their core and flick to buy time for our growth. Hermione, believe me, I am confident in my ability to defeat Voldemort on my own." Next year, the conflict between the Ministry of Magic and Dumbledore might put you in a difficult position, having to choose between Harry and me. Ethan paused before continuing, "But we need to be patient. Our forces will eventually have to confront Voldemort and the Death Eaters. We are just starting to improve, and we cannot afford to squander this in unnecessary conflicts. Opposing Fudge now would only trigger a wizarding civil war." Hermione nodded in agreement. She had already decided in her heart to stand firmly by Ethan's side, regardless of what he said. However, she found it too embarrassing to voice this sentiment outright. She believed that being too forward could lead to downfall, and thought she could learn more about subtlety from Fleur. The image of a defeated dog came to mind, symbolizing the consequences of failing to balance ambition with discretion. Chapter 455, A Clash of Ideals at the Ministry. In the Ministry of Magic, on the first floor, the offices of the Minister of Magic and the Logistics Office are situated. It was here that Dumbledore urgently approached Fudge, presenting him with a series of radical suggestions and warnings. Fudge found these propositions both outrageous and unacceptable. Seated behind his desk, he glared at the elderly wizard before him, his heart ablaze with indignation. Liberate Azkaban from the Dementor's grasp and dispatch peace emissaries to the Giants to prevent them from aligning with Voldemort. Fudge's voice dripped with scorn and disbelief. Dumbledore, have you lost your senses in your old age? Do you even comprehend the gravity of your words? Dumbledore maintained his composure, shaking his head gently as he responded. Fudge, you must realize that relying solely on Dementors for Azkaban's security is not our only option. Furthermore, perpetually viewing giants as adversaries is a stance we can no longer afford. It's time for change. Change? Fudge scoffed, his skepticism palpable. Easier said than done. Without the Dementors, who will keep those dark creatures in check? Are you aware of the chaos they could unleash upon the Ministry? And as for the giants, do you genuinely believe that sending a handful of diplomats will resolve our long-standing issues? They're beings of limited intellect and brute strength, incapable of meaningful dialogue. Fudge continued, earnestly hoping to convey his perspective to Dumbledore. Some argue that the mere presence of Dementors guarding Azkaban grants them peace of mind at night. However, Dumbledore seemed unswayed by Fudge's arguments. With a slight frown, he softly countered, "We cannot allow the Dementors' intimidating presence to blind us to the adverse effects they inflict. The psychological trauma inflicted upon many wizards is a price too steep." Fudge dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. Psychological trauma? They brought it upon themselves by breaking the law and ending up in Azkaban. He found the idea of negotiating peace with giants even more ludicrous. In his view, it was an absurd notion to think that such simple-minded beings, notorious for their crimes in the last Wizarding War and despised by the wizarding community, could ever engage in peace talks with the Ministry. Dumbledore sighed deeply. Fudge, we cannot let our fear of complications drive us to inaction. While Dementors may deter wizards, they remain dangerous entities, and giants are not beyond communication, provided we approach them with genuine intent. Enough, Fudge interrupted sharply. Dumbledore, your achievements are renowned, but this matter is beyond your jurisdiction. Your words won't sway me. I have my strategies for Azkaban, and I don't require your guidance. He sighed, looking earnestly at Dumbledore. He understood the underlying reason for Dumbledore's suggestions, but remained skeptical. Dumbledore, do you truly believe in the resurrection of that mysterious man? Your proposals seem utterly preposterous to me. Dumbledore sighed, his gaze imbued with a profound wisdom and resolve. Fudge, I understand your skepticism, but we must prepare for the worst. The power of this mysterious man far exceeds our expectations. Harry himself witnessed his resurrection. Fudge, animated with disbelief, retorted, how can a wizard, presumed dead for over a decade, emerge from his grave? It's absurd. If resurrection were possible, it would have occurred over 10 years ago. Why now? Despite his reservations and the advice of his allies, including Jaina, who had cautioned him to err on the side of belief rather than doubt, Fudge remained unconvinced. Dumbledore faced Fudge calmly. We cannot afford to dismiss this threat simply because it challenges our understanding of possibility. The stakes are too high and the evidence too compelling. We must act, and we must act now. It's unbelievable. Don't believe it. We must face reality and be prepared to deal with it. If the mysterious man is really resurrected, we must have a plan to deal with it, Dumbledore stated firmly. A coping plan? What do you think we should do? Fudge asked, clearly dissatisfied. Do you really want to believe in the so-called secret method of resurrection involving bones, flesh, and blood? That's just a legend. Sometimes legends are not unfounded, Dumbledore replied slowly. Moreover, Harry and I witnessed it with our own eyes. That's just a Death Eater conspiracy, Fudge retorted angrily, trying to comfort himself. It's not surprising that those crazy Death Eaters would do anything. Didn't they do enough ridiculous things during the First Wizarding War? A year ago, they caused a scene at the Quidditch World Cup. It's all the Death Eaters' fault. Fudge's voice grew louder and more agitated, as if venting was the only way to express his dissatisfaction and anger. Seeing Dumbledore's unwavering stance, Fudge sighed deeply. Okay, let's assume, just a hypothesis, that there is some dark magic capable of resurrecting a person, and the mysterious man really comes back to life. So what? This doesn't mean you can go public with the news, he urged earnestly. We can act in private, quietly, under the guise of targeting the Death Eaters, not Voldemort. If you agree with this, I'm willing to use all my strength to fight the Dark Wizards, Death Eaters, and that mysterious man. I'm even willing to ask Jaina to send her elite Auror team to deal with those dark forces. That was Fudge's genuine belief. If Dumbledore supported him like Jaina did, he would not hesitate to attack the Dark Wizards, the Death Eaters, and even the mysterious man. However, Dumbledore still shook his head. I've said it before, only by making the news public and uniting the entire wizarding world can we cope with future crises, Dumbledore insisted. Unity? Fudge scoffed bitterly. How can we be united? Once the news leaks out, the entire magical world will fall into panic. The authority of the Ministry of Magic, the trust of wizards, and the stability of society that I've spent more than 10 years building will be destroyed in one day. Dumbledore was silent for a moment before responding slowly. Fudge, I understand your concerns, but as leaders, we cannot be swayed by panic. We must strengthen our faith and lead the wizards to face this challenge together. Challenge? Fudge looked at Dumbledore incredulously. This is more than just a challenge. This is about my career. It's related to my future as the Minister of Magic. Once the news of that person's return is confirmed, those wizards who are overwhelmed by panic will direct their anger at the Ministry of Magic, and at me, the Minister of Magic. If I lose my position because of my confrontation with the mysterious man, won't all my years of hard work be in vain? Dumbledore regarded Fudge with a hint of helplessness. Fudge, I understand your concerns, but as the Minister of Magic, your duty is to maintain the peace and stability of the wizarding world, not your personal position and power. We cannot disregard the entire magical community just because of our personal gains and losses. Hearing this, Fudge felt a chill. He realized the vast difference in their perspectives. You put it so easily, he shouted angrily. You can always stand on your moral high ground and accuse me. You are not the Minister of Magic. You don't have to endure the stress I face. You will always be the great and popular Albus Dumbledore. But let me tell you, no Minister of Magic would want to see this happen. The argument escalated, and they parted ways unhappily. Fudge, you're going to regret this, Dumbledore warned before leaving. Dumbledore, I am the Minister of Magic, Fudge declared emphatically. After Dumbledore's departure, Fudge, still seething with anger, slumped into a chair, his breath heavy, his dissatisfaction and resentment towards Dumbledore deepening. Damn Dumbledore, he muttered through gritted teeth. Teeth clenched, he said, Don't think I'm unaware of your intentions. You want me to step down? It won't be that easy. Unexpectedly, his assistant, a young wizard, suddenly spoke up. Minister Fudge, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Perhaps you should reconsider Professor Dumbledore's suggestion. Over the years, he has never shown any interest in usurping your position. Maybe there's merit in his advice? After all, he is the most respected white wizard in the magical world. Is there really a need for him to spread rumors? Fudge sat behind his desk, his gaze fixed on the young wizard with a dark intensity, his eyes sharp as daggers, as if trying to pin him in place. The atmosphere in the office was charged, heavy with the tension of an impending storm. I believe you are no longer suited for your current position, Fudge said coldly, his voice carrying an air of unquestionable authority. Expect your transfer notice by tomorrow at the latest. As of now, you are dismissed. Fudge's glare intensified, signaling the young wizard to leave. Stunned, the young wizard looked at Fudge, disbelief etched on his face. He had merely spoken the truth. Why should it cost him his promising career? He attempted to speak to defend himself, but under Fudge's piercing gaze, he ultimately chose silence. As the young wizard walked away, a look of dejection on his face, a sneer formed on Fudge's lips. In his view, while the assistant was competent, he failed to understand the most crucial aspect of his job, discerning the boss's thoughts. Fudge needed an assistant who could not only solve problems, but also be unwaveringly loyal and in tune with his thoughts, not someone who acted on their own beliefs and caused issues. What does he mean? Dumbledore has no need to spread rumors. Fudge mused with a sneer. At such a young age, to offer what he deemed correct advice so arrogantly. After years of dealing with Dumbledore, did he not understand the man's character? Dumbledore had no interest in the position of Minister of Magic, a fact that seemed lost on the young wizard. However, considering the young wizard had worked diligently for 2 years, Fudge decided to give him another chance. A transfer, not a direct dismissal. This, in Fudge's mind, was an act of benevolence. Cornelius Fudge was acutely aware that his position as Minister of Magic was largely due to Dumbledore's gracious refusal of the role. Even after securing the position, Fudge never forgot the overwhelming popularity and support Dumbledore had during the election, far surpassing that of Crouch, who was then the favorite. Fudge's victory came in the wake of a scandal involving Crouch's son and the Death Eaters, propelling him into power. While Fudge harbored jealousy and resentment towards Crouch, he never felt such emotions towards Dumbledore. To Fudge, Dumbledore was not a rival, but a stabilizing force for his leadership. Fudge knew the importance of aligning himself with Dumbledore's esteemed reputation to solidify his own position. The elder wizard seemed more than willing to lend such support. Consequently, Fudge always demonstrated great respect for Dumbledore, at least outwardly. Dumbledore's backing was crucial. Whenever Fudge introduced a new decree, as long as it had Dumbledore's endorsement, it was swiftly accepted and implemented. The community trusted Dumbledore's judgment implicitly, leaving little room for political adversaries to challenge Fudge's decisions. Maintaining a cordial relationship with Dumbledore was not only crucial for stabilizing Fudge's position, but also for preserving his image within the Ministry of Magic. Therefore, even when he found himself at odds with some of Dumbledore's decisions, he opted for silence. For instance, when Dumbledore appointed a werewolf as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Fudge was internally conflicted. He knew such an appointment would typically be unacceptable in the wizarding community, yet he chose to overlook it. His decision was not rooted in agreement with the action, but stemmed from his belief that it was a matter internal to Hogwarts. He reasoned that any potential mishap would fall solely on Dumbledore's shoulders, leaving his own role as the Minister of Magic unaffected. However, the situation at hand was entirely different. Fudge had never anticipated that Dumbledore, celebrated for his wisdom, would propose something so outlandishly impractical. How could this possibly succeed? Fudge muttered to himself, half wondering if Dumbledore was challenging his intelligence. Is Dumbledore losing his touch? How could he suggest something so preposterous? Update 417. I warmly invite everyone to support me with custom orders, gifts, monthly subscriptions, comments, and rewards. Your votes are especially appreciated. As the author, your support is incredibly important to me. Thank you. Chapter 456. If Dumbledore could devise a strategy that would not only avoid causing panic among the wizards in the wizarding world, but also effectively counter the forces of darkness, all while enhancing his reputation, he would be more than willing to embrace it and work closely with Dumbledore. Maintaining peace in the wizarding world was of paramount importance to him, especially with the upcoming election. Elections, held every 7 years, often brought shifts in power and policy. As he glanced at the clock on the wall, his thoughts drifted to the post-election period. The prospect of being re-elected was enticing. However, in the event of an electoral defeat, he hoped to leave behind a peaceful and stable environment for the wizarding world. This, he believed, would safeguard him from any adverse consequences. Yet, Dumbledore's approach seemed to diverge from his expectations. Fudge began to entertain the notion that Dumbledore might be using this crisis as an opportunity to oust him and appoint a more stringent minister. These thoughts haunted him. He considered the possibility that Dumbledore, in order to confront the enigmatic Voldemort, might even assume the role of Minister of Magic himself, leading the ministry in a vigorous campaign against the dark forces. He envisioned a scenario where Dumbledore's influence could facilitate the election of a hardliner like Barty Crouch or Scrimgeour, the current head of the Auror office, who would adopt a more aggressive stance against dark wizards. Fudge shook his head, attempting to dispel these thoughts. He recognized that Dumbledore's interest in power was not as pronounced as others, but this did not preclude him from leveraging the crisis to instigate changes within the Ministry of Magic. This realization sent a shiver down his spine. This was why, when Jaina presented her analysis, he swiftly abandoned his initial plan to discipline his insubordinate subordinate. Instead, he chose to ally with her against Dumbledore. Jaina was correct. She was young and ambitious, and her time would come. There was no need to precipitate a confrontation that would only weaken the ministry by fueling internal disputes. The priority should be to address the more significant threat posed by Dumbledore. The situation escalated when Dumbledore publicly announced Voldemort's resurrection to all the teachers and students at Hogwarts. This revelation struck Fudge like a thunderbolt, driving him to the brink of madness. The fact that all Hogwarts students were now aware meant that the news would soon spread throughout the wizarding world. Fudge was incensed. Dumbledore, that cunning old fox, he's aiming to dethrone me. By disclosing this information, he's put me in a vulnerable position, eroding the trust and support of the wizarding community. At this critical juncture, Fudge knew he had to remain composed and avoid rash actions. He decided to tolerate Jaina's defiance temporarily and focus on countering Dumbledore. He needed to persuade others that Dumbledore was too elderly to continue as headmaster of Hogwarts. Meanwhile, Fudge faced another dilemma. Although he felt a brief sense of relief after dismissing an ineffectual assistant, the satisfaction was short-lived, and he soon found himself embroiled in further complications. Fudge sat, pondering his next move, aware that the challenges ahead were daunting, but determined to navigate them with strategic acumen. At his desk, surrounded by a mountain of work documents, Fudge couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. He realized the urgent need for a competent right-hand assistant to manage these complex issues. Although Umbridge was undeniably loyal, her limited abilities rendered her useless in such critical times. Fudge found himself missing a young man who, despite occasional lapses in judgment, had proven capable in his duties. His attention was then captured by a letter of recommendation from Jaina. As he read through it, his interest piqued. Crouch's assistant? He mused, recognizing the potential in the young man mentioned. Setting aside the document he was reviewing, Fudge massaged his aching forehead before delving into Percy Weasley's personal profile. Percy had shown commendable performance during his tenure with Crouch, a fact that had masked Crouch's own issues. More impressively, Percy was the first to flag potential problems with Crouch, gathering substantial evidence in the process. His dedication and loyalty to the Ministry of Magic did not go unnoticed by Fudge, who admired these qualities. Fudge decided to meet Percy in person, recognizing him as a promising candidate. He also considered the strategic advantage of having Percy in his office, given the Weasley family's close ties to Dumbledore. By gaining insight into the Weasley family, Fudge hoped to gather information on Dumbledore, thereby enabling him to better anticipate and counteract his old rival's moves. Imagining his success in taking control and defeating Dumbledore brought a proud smile to Fudge's face. Soon after, the heavy wooden door of the Minister of Magic's office was gently knocked, and a somewhat nervous Percy Weasley entered. Weasley, have you heard anything lately about Dumbledore? Fudge asked directly, aiming to gauge Percy's stance. Percy, momentarily taken aback, quickly replied, Minister, are you referring to Professor Dumbledore's statements regarding that mysterious man? Yes, Fudge confirmed. Dumbledore believes Voldemort has been resurrected and has made some quite radical suggestions to me. Radical? Percy echoed, quickly grasping the situation. Yes, Minister, I've heard. But in my view, Professor Dumbledore's claims seem somewhat premature. He hasn't provided any concrete evidence to support his assertions. You're right, Fudge sighed, expressing his frustration over the panic Dumbledore's remarks had caused within the magical community. The lack of evidence only served to spread confusion, leading to an unprecedented number of Howler letters. Percy then tentatively suggested, Minister, perhaps we could diminish Professor Dumbledore's influence in the wizarding world through the Daily Prophet. The newspaper still wields significant influence. Fudge's eyes sparkled with approval at the suggestion. That's an excellent idea. We can commission a few articles to set the record straight, allowing everyone to understand the truth. Although Fudge was not the most astute politician, he was quick to recognize the merit in Percy's suggestion. Confronting Dumbledore directly was futile, given his immense prestige and power. However, shaping public opinion presented a viable alternative. Impressed by Percy's acumen, Fudge shifted the conversation, inquiring about a recent development he had heard about, indicating his interest in leveraging Percy's insights further. The organization was called the Order of the Phoenix. Percy's heart tightened as the question came unexpectedly, leaving him unprepared. Minister, I'm not sure. My father never mentioned it at home, he stammered, quickly adding to avoid any misunderstandings. But I believe my father is loyal to the Ministry of Magic. He has always done his utmost for the Ministry. Recently, Minister Fudge had been furious because Dumbledore had leaked information about Voldemort without authorization. He made it clear that anyone associated with Dumbledore could no longer stay in the Ministry. Naturally, Percy was cautious not to say anything that might cause trouble for himself or his father. Fudge seemed quite satisfied with Percy's attitude. Weasley, my previous assistant, is no longer up to his job. Will you take his place? Fudge suddenly proposed. The investigation on Barty Crouch is over. Your performance in this incident was impressive. Lady Proudmoore also recommended you to me and spoke highly of your abilities. Of course, Minister. I will dedicate myself fully to the Ministry of Magic, Percy responded, unable to hide his joy. He immediately pledged his loyalty to Fudge, guessing the fate of Fudge's previous assistant. Minister Fudge's expression turned grave. Weasley, I need you to keep a close eye on your family. If they join this so-called Order of the Phoenix, you must report Dumbledore's activities to me promptly to prevent him from making another grave mistake. Fudge's anger was evident as he continued. Even if he wanted to combat dark forces, his approach is wrong. It's merely causing panic, and Miss Proudmoore doesn't agree with his methods. His claims about the Dark Lord's return have many departments in the Ministry working overtime. Yes, Minister, I will monitor my family's situation closely and report back to you, Percy agreed, though his true thoughts remained hidden. Minister Fudge nodded, satisfied. Very good. You can officially start tomorrow. Do well. I have high expectations for you. Thank you, Minister. I will, Percy replied, leaving the office filled with ambition and excitement. Fudge didn't concern himself with Percy's thoughts or the fact that he was recommended by Jaina. He needed Percy to understand his directives and assist him effectively. After Percy's departure, Fudge contacted the Daily Prophet to initiate a campaign based on Percy's suggestions. He tasked Rita Skeeter with writing an article to vehemently deny the rumors of Voldemort's return, cleverly weaving in Dumbledore's suggestions and preventive measures. The article quickly went viral thanks to the Daily Prophet's extensive readership. Sensing the political maneuvering, Rita immediately informed Jaina of the developments. Jaina was pleased, seeing it as an opportunity for Dumbledore to face setbacks. She believed that Dumbledore's popularity would suffer as a result of Fudge's actions. Indeed, Fudge didn't need to exert much effort to tarnish Dumbledore's reputation. He easily convinced the public that the once revered wizard was now just an old man, confused and out of touch, for claiming Voldemort's return without evidence. However, Fudge's ambitions didn't stop there. He knew that to solidify his position fully, he needed to continue his strategic moves. To address the issue of Harry Potter, the renowned savior, and the boy who lived, whose reputation precedes him in the wizarding world, Fudge found himself in a predicament. He could not allow Harry to disrupt his own agenda. Consequently, Fudge once again employed Rita Skeeter's articles as a strategic tool to manipulate public opinion. He insinuated that the scar on Harry's forehead was not merely a physical blemish, but had long-term detrimental effects on his mental health. Fudge even went as far as to suggest that Harry might be experiencing hallucinations due to the severe torture he endured at the hands of the Death Eaters. As a result, Harry's credibility was significantly undermined, and his image in the eyes of the public was tarnished. Who would place their trust in someone potentially suffering from mental health issues? Certainly, those wizards who were in denial about Voldemort's return would not. Regarding the identities of the Death Eaters, Harry claimed had rejoined Voldemort, Fudge dismissed these accusations with contempt. Without irrefutable evidence, such claims held no weight and only spelled trouble for him. Fudge was well aware that certain individuals were behaving suspiciously. However, as long as they kept a low profile, refrained from causing disturbances, and evaded capture by others, he chose to turn a blind eye. His primary goal was to conclude his term in office without any complications. After all, what would be the benefit of arresting those affluent pure-blood wizards? They were the ones who made substantial donations to the Ministry of Magic's various causes. Fudge scoffed at the notion of relying on the Weasleys for financial support. Given their own financial struggles, it was unrealistic to expect them to contribute to the ministry's coffers. Chapter 457, The Day He Became Assistant Minister. On the day Percy Weasley became Assistant Minister, he locked himself in his room, deep in thought about his next steps. He was acutely aware that this position was not just a symbol of power and glory, but also a battlefield laden with challenges and choices. In the intricate battle for power within the Ministry of Magic, he knew he had to navigate the treacherous waters of alliances and enmities with care. Specifically, as the newly appointed assistant minister, he found himself at a crossroads, needing to choose his allegiance among several factions. There were three main options before him. The first was the Dumbledore faction, to which his family had natural ties. The second was the Jaina faction, which had provided him with this opportunity and propelled him to his current status. And the third was the faction led by Fudge, the Minister of Magic, whom he was now directly serving. As Percy's fingers tapped unconsciously on his desk, thoughts of Dumbledore flitted through his mind. "Is Dumbledore really that old fool?" he murmured to himself, only to immediately dismiss the thought. He recognized Dumbledore as a great and wise wizard, whose decisions were always laden with deep meaning and purpose. The current tensions within the ministry were well known, and Dumbledore's actions, though seemingly at odds with Fudge's interests, were typical of the complexities in their relationship. Percy understood that while Dumbledore's generous actions might not have been intended to cause harm, they inevitably clashed with Fudge's political ambitions. To Dumbledore, the position of Minister of Magic was merely a tool for the greater good, a concept that Fudge, with his patience wearing thin, might not appreciate. Percy was well aware that getting involved in this turmoil could jeopardize his future. Meanwhile, Jaina's power was at its zenith, presenting a seemingly ideal refuge. However, Jaina's apparent hesitation to officially bring him into her fold left Percy feeling uneasy. His thoughts were interrupted by the memory of a recent encounter with Penelope Clearwater, now the captain of the Auror team and his office assistant. He was taken aback by her transformation. Her demeanor and strength had grown immensely, rendering her almost unrecognizable. Penelope had been straightforward with him. "Jaina plans to recommend you for Fudge's assistant. However, we need you to monitor Fudge for us and report his activities." Percy had expected such a request to be made with more caution, given its sensitive nature. Yet, Penelope's nonchalant attitude revealed a deep-seated confidence, a testament to Jaina's stable and powerful position within the ministry. This confidence, coupled with the support of a rising young genius seen as a future Dumbledore, made Percy's choice clear. He resolved to follow Penelope's instructions, outwardly aligning himself with Minister Fudge while secretly joining forces with the Jaina faction. Percy understood that climbing the ranks in the ministry's vast bureaucracy required not just exceptional abilities, but also a broad network of connections. By securing his position as assistant minister, he was taking a crucial step on his ambitious journey. Even if Minister Fudge may step down in the future, his qualifications and experience will remain valuable assets. After all, holding such a position is an excellent platform for gaining experience, exposing him to the core affairs of the Ministry of Magic and cultivating the abilities needed to be an outstanding ministry official. It was precisely because of the annexation of Crouch's power that the Jaina faction came to control half of the Ministry of Magic. In the Crouch incident, there was key cooperation with the Jaina faction. Therefore, these cooperative connections are undoubtedly the most significant connections he could have access to. By engaging in espionage work against the faction leaders, he could not only gain the trust and favor of Jaina's faction, but also secure a relatively core position for himself within the faction. However, the idea of Fudge asking him to be a spy seemed absurd to Percy. Jaina asked him to spy for Fudge, and Fudge asked him to spy for Dumbledore. Had he become a double agent for both Jaina and Fudge? What codename would he use? Surely not pangolin. Percy suspected this was a poorly thought-out idea by Fudge. He did crave power and status and was willing to work hard and make sacrifices for it. But he never considered betraying his family for it. He knew that if his father were fired from the Ministry of Magic, the family's financial resources would be severed, and they would face significant difficulties. Percy also had 4 brothers and sisters still studying at Hogwarts, requiring a substantial amount of tuition each year. Who else could they rely on for this money but their father? Could Bill and Charlie be expected to support the family's finances? They could not. He wanted to start a family. Then who could he rely on? He couldn't rely on himself. This realization made him think of the empty Gringotts vault at home, filling Percy with a sense of sadness. The largest sum of money he ever received was 100 galleons. That was the reward Ethan paid for letting him spy on Crouch. He vividly remembered taking the 100 galleons and, following Ethan's suggestion, buying a set of decent formal attire and accessories. That set of clothes cost almost half of his money, but it did help him make a good impression on many people and laid the foundation for his later career. He saved the remaining 50 galleons in Gringotts, which to this day accounts for almost half of his savings. For this reason, he also wanted to join the Jaina faction, as they were genuinely willing to pay. As he worked longer, Percy gradually realized the value of money. This made him even more critical of his father, who insisted on siding with Dumbledore when the entire Ministry of Magic had distanced themselves from Dumbledore. Although most people distancing themselves were merely pretending to appease Fudge, they should at least pretend to fool Fudge first. What would the family do if their father was really fired from the Ministry of Magic? Did they expect the Order of the Phoenix to help them find jobs? At this time, Percy discovered that Fred and George, the mischievous twins, had become the most troublesome children in the family. Recently, they approached him to inquire about joke product patents. After some conversation, he learned that the two had opened their own small shop in Hogwarts with Ethan's funding, and the business was doing quite well. They knew how to make money at a young age, didn't they? However, Percy knew that if he was unwilling to spy on his family, he would have to come up with a foolproof plan to deal with Fudge. So what should he do? Percy planned to move out of the house, so it would be Percy found himself in a difficult position. He needed to devise a plausible explanation for his desire to move out without arousing Minister Fudge's suspicions. Having recently secured the role of assistant minister, Percy was acutely aware of the stakes involved. His future hinged on navigating this delicate situation with finesse. He recognized that while Fudge might lack competence in managing government affairs, he was adept at maneuvering within the corridors of power. This realization underscored the importance of not underestimating Fudge's acumen. A clumsy or overly fabricated excuse would surely raise red flags. Moreover, Percy understood the necessity of caution, not only for himself, but also for his family. He needed to alert his father to tread carefully. The prospect of Fudge dismissing him, thereby severing the family's financial lifeline, loomed as a potential catastrophe. With a sense of resolve, Percy muttered to himself about the unreliability of his associates. He then gave himself a firm pat on the cheek in front of the mirror, attempting to invigorate his appearance. It was clear to him that the time had come to step up and navigate these treacherous waters with all the skill and diplomacy he could muster. Chapter 4-58. At the bustling dinner table of the Weasley family, Percy Weasley suddenly stood up, his face radiating pride that he couldn't hide. "I have important news to tell everyone. I've been promoted." His announcement instantly silenced the table. The Weasleys, who had been animatedly discussing the possibility of joining the Order of the Phoenix, stopped and stared at Percy in surprise. Fred was the first to break the silence, his expression one of disbelief. "You were promoted? They actually promoted you?" "Why not?" Percy retorted, glaring at his brother. "I thought you were having trouble with Crouch," George added, equally puzzled by this unexpected development. Percy, looking disdainfully at his twin, replied, "That's just an excuse they use. Anyone with a brain would realize that no one would suspect their boss of wrongdoing unless they no longer wished to work at the Ministry of Magic. The investigation into Mr. Crouch concluded, and they recognized my abilities, leading to my promotion. The Weasley family exchanged looks of surprise. The warm atmosphere in the kitchen had shifted to one of tension. Mr. Weasley, sensing something amiss with Percy's promotion, set down his knife and fork and looked intently at his son. "Percy, what position were you offered?" he asked. Percy straightened his posture, barely containing his excitement. "I've been appointed as the assistant to Minister Fudge in the office of the Minister of Magic." For a young man only a year out of Hogwarts, this was undoubtedly a dream position. However, the Weasley family's reaction was not one of joy. They were well aware of the complexities involving Fudge and Dumbledore and understood the potential risks associated with this job. Mr. Weasley's expression grew serious as he scrutinized Percy. "This is peculiar. I suspect Fudge has placed you in his office to use you, either to spy on our family or on Dumbledore." His voice deepened with concern. "Did you agree to this?" The atmosphere in the kitchen turned icy as everyone awaited Percy's response. Taking a deep breath, Percy admitted, "Yes, I agreed." Mrs. Weasley's expression turned furious. "Percy, how could you agree to spy on your own family? Don't you realize the trouble this could cause us? We are a family. We should trust each other, not harbor suspicions." "Why shouldn't I agree?" Percy's eyes flashed with stubbornness and a hint of indifference. He addressed his father, his voice tinged with resentment. "You probably don't realize how negatively your reputation affects me at the ministry. Whenever people hear my last name is Weasley, they look at me differently, as if I'm tainted." His voice grew more passionate, revealing genuine pain and resentment. "Ever since I started at the ministry, I've been fighting to escape the shadow of your reputation. It's been a desperate struggle. Without proving myself, I'd remain at the bottom, unable to advance. Your reputation has been like invisible shackles holding me back." He paused, taking a moment to calm himself before continuing. "Luckily, I'm the only one in the family who's entered the ministry. Otherwise, more people would blame you for their struggles. You've never considered how your lack of promotion or our home situation might affect me. Haven't you ever wondered why?" Ignoring Mr. Weasley's increasingly upset expression, Percy let out all the frustration and pain he had endured over the year. "Are you finished?" Mr. Weasley finally asked, his face pale with anger. He glared at Percy with fury, abruptly stood up, and with a swift motion, slammed the plate before him to the ground. If Mrs. Weasley hadn't caught him in time, he might have faced severe consequences. "Arthur, calm down," she urged, gripping her husband's arm tightly. "And Percy, you too. Stop talking." However, Percy seemed oblivious to his mother's pleas and continued to express his frustrations. "What's wrong with me? I'm just speaking my mind. You always tell me to consider and sacrifice for my family, but who considers my feelings? I'm human too, my own dreams and aspirations." "Percy, you owe your father an apology," Bill interjected, sensing a strange and unsettling shift in Percy, as if the brotherly bond they shared was fracturing. Unmoved, Percy coldly warned Arthur, "Fudge is already doubting you. He's contemplating whether to dismiss you from the Ministry of Magic. Have you thought about what would happen to your family if you lost your job? Fred, George, Ron, and Ginny are still in school. Have you considered their tuition, living expenses, and our family's needs? You have no idea how challenging it is for them at school, bearing the stigma of having a father notorious in the Ministry of Magic." "Shut up, Percy," Bill shouted, feeling that Percy's words were excessively harsh and intending to halt his tirade. "Bill, you've never experienced it. You don't know the humiliation of attending school with second-hand books and robes," Percy retorted, his voice rising. "Especially in my first year, I was mocked extensively. Can you understand that feeling? Do you know how desperately we wish for new books and robes like everyone else?" He glared at his father. "Aren't you aware that this could prevent us from holding our heads high?" The room fell silent, everyone stunned by Percy's words. Though his observations were accurate, they had all faced ridicule due to their father's reputation. His audacity to voice such thoughts was shocking. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the cries of the Weasley family, and all eyes turned to Percy, who had become the family's adversary in that moment. "I know you all wish to join the Order, seeking glory and justice," Percy continued, his tone now earnest. But have you considered Dumbledore's precarious situation? He's already in deep trouble. By aligning yourselves with him, aren't you worried about being implicated and dragged down with him? This is sheer folly. He sighed, sharing his viewpoint. Everyone thinks Dumbledore is senile. He knows the magical world wants to avoid mentioning you-know-who's return, yet he insists on publicizing it. He's not just opposing Fudge. He's against the entire British wizarding community, with few supporters. Percy, Dumbledore has his reasons. Both Harry and Dumbledore witnessed you-know-who's return. They wouldn't lie, Mrs. Weasley said, her eyes pleading with her son to cease his provocations. Percy's face twisted into a sneer. Mother, I'd like to believe Dumbledore. But without concrete evidence, who will believe us? The only evidence is their word, and that's hardly convincing in an era where no one wants to acknowledge the Dark Lord's return. People would rather believe Dumbledore is old and confused, not to be trusted. Mr. Ethan Green, everyone knows him, right? Percy shifted the topic. He's long predicted the Dark Lord's return, informing us privately that the magical world will face chaos in the coming years. Fred raised an eyebrow, teasing. Oh, that Ethan Green? I remember. Didn't you always admire him and want to follow him? George chimed in. Yes. Didn't you also say that he is the future leader of the magical world? Percy glared at them. I'm discussing serious matters now. Have you seen Mr. Green stand up and announce that the mysterious man is back? He looked around before continuing. I've read the interview report with him. Throughout the entire conversation, he used words like speculation, suspicion, and I believe, but he never explicitly stated that the mysterious man had returned. He's fully aware of how foolish and dangerous it is to spread such news without solid evidence. Percy sneered. Deputy Director Gianna, who is close to Ethan, has been promoted to Director of the Legal Enforcement Department. Along with her allies, she now oversees half of the Ministry of Magic's departments. Yet, even they didn't dare to publicly acknowledge the news of the mysterious man's return, knowing the panic and confusion it would cause. He shook his head. Dumbledore not only spread the word about Voldemort's return, but also made such ludicrous suggestions, canceling the Dementors and wooing giants. This is only adding chaos to the wizarding world. If he truly wanted to address all the troubles and threats, he should have proposed eliminating all the dangerous prisoners in Azkaban and eradicating giants from Britain entirely. Instead, he's causing trouble for everyone with these unrealistic and doomed-to-fail suggestions. Hearing this, Mr. Weasley couldn't contain his anger any longer. Are you finished? He threw the object in his hand towards Percy. I really misjudged you. Who do you think you are? How dare you criticize Dumbledore like that? I'm merely expressing my opinion, Percy replied calmly, looking directly at his father. If you choose to betray the Ministry of Magic and join that illegal organization, then I have nothing more to say. But remember this, from this moment on, I am no longer a part of this family. Percy skillfully dodged the object thrown by Mr. Weasley, which hit the wall with a muffled sound. He turned around, expressionless, and walked upstairs with heavy steps to pack his luggage. In his room, Percy quickly packed his belongings. Clothes, books, and personal items vanished into his suitcase one by one. Standing in the center of the room, he took a deep breath, and the magic of apparition enveloped him. With a burst of distorted air and flickering light, Percy disappeared. Downstairs in the hall, Mrs. Weasley, sensing something amiss with the noise upstairs, hurried to Percy's room. Pushing the door open, she found the room empty, the air tinged with a sense of desolation. He's gone, Mrs. Weasley murmured, her voice laden with an indescribable sense of loss and sorrow, on the verge of collapse. Tears filled her eyes once more. Mr. Weasley, hearing the commotion, joined her, and seeing the empty room, his expression darkened further. Let him go! Just pretend I don't have this son anymore. No, Arthur, you can't say that, Mrs. Weasley sobbed, unable to contain her tears. I need to find him and have a proper conversation. She turned towards the door, her intuition telling her where Percy might have gone. After all, there weren't many places Percy could turn to at this moment. Chapter 459. Everyone ate in a hurry and gathered in Bill's room to discuss the matter. Soon, the sound of things being thrown downstairs was heard again. George, with a frown, expressed his concern thoughtfully. I always feel like something is wrong about this. "What's wrong?" Bill asked, looking at George in confusion, waiting for his explanation. "Think about it. Percy is not stupid. How could he not know about the mysterious man's return?" Fred took over the conversation and analyzed it carefully. Then why did he deliberately go against his father and choose to side with the Ministry of Magic? Why? Ron scratched his head, looking at Fred and George in confusion. "I don't understand what you mean." "Because Percy has an excessive desire for power," Ginny suddenly said, surprising everyone. As the youngest child and a girl in the Weasley family, she had never before participated in such serious discussions. Traditionally, she would stay on the sidelines and listen, as making decisions was seen as a matter for the men in the family. Even Molly, who is usually strong-willed, would defer to Arthur on external affairs. However, Ginny broke this tradition with her comment. "He has always wanted to climb up and become the Minister of Magic. Now, with the opportunity to become the Assistant Minister of Magic, he would not let it go," she added with a hint of disdain. "So, for this position, he did not hesitate to fall out with his father or even leave our family." Ron's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's right," Ginny sighed helplessly. "He must have been very frustrated in the past few months. He always wanted to prove his ability and become the best in the family, so he chose to side with the Ministry of Magic, which was more beneficial to him. It's crazy. How could he treat his family like this? Are power and status really that important to him?" Ron waved his hands angrily. "Don't be so surprised." Ginny glanced at Ron lightly. "Everyone has his or her own ambitions. Hasn't Dad thought about these issues?" Bill suddenly realized something, looking at Fred and George with strange eyes, and finally stared at Ginny. "How did you think of so much?" His eyes lingered on Ginny for a long time. The youngest sister, who seemed to have just entered Hogwarts yesterday, was now analyzing the problem in a clear and coherent manner, displaying a level of insight that was, in a way, more astute than Arthur Weasley's. "Don't look at me like that." Ginny shook her head gently, her mouth curving into a warm smile. "If you spend every day with Ethan and learn from him, you can also gain a bit of his wisdom." Speaking of Ethan, Ginny's heart seemed to shine. "Is it really?" Ron looked at his sister, dumbfounded. He hadn't realized Ethan had such an influence. Yet it seemed true. He would never have believed 2 years ago that Hermione could win the Triwizard Tournament in her 4th year. Ginny did learn a lot from Ethan, and she was the manager of the Erudite Society. Fred shrugged, bringing the conversation back on track. "As for Percy, I'm not surprised at all that he would do such a thing. After all, in his eyes, power and status are the most important. Many issues are closely related to interests," Ginny continued, patiently explaining to everyone. "The same is true for the conflict between Fudge and Dumbledore. Dumbledore's actions threatened Fudge's ministerial status, which Fudge would naturally not tolerate. To preserve his power and status, Fudge could only use any means to discredit Dumbledore and Harry and deny the fact that the mysterious man had been resurrected. But Ron wanted to say something more, but was interrupted. "Nothing good to say," George interrupted. "A person like Fudge will never tolerate losing his position as minister, because that Ethan was well aware that aligning himself with certain forces to control the Ministry of Magic would significantly harm his interests. However, he believed that the resurrection of the mysterious man, though a significant event, was probably as crucial as maintaining his own power. That's why Ethan planned to support the forces to control the Ministry of Magic," Ginny explained, spreading her hands. "These politicians are only interested in fighting for power and gain. They don't care about the safety of the entire magical world. How can we expect good politics from these insects?" After leaving the Weasleys' house, Percy didn't seek out those familiar faces. Instead, he returned to the Ministry of Magic and headed straight to the 2nd floor, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, which served as the headquarters of Jaina's faction. There, he found Penelope Clearwater, the woman he once had a crush on. "Penelope, I've thought it over," Percy said, his eyes firm and without any hesitation. "I am willing to accept your conditions and work for you." In his view, choosing sides and placing bets required decisiveness and sincerity. Otherwise, it would be easy to encounter trouble and fail to overcome it. Penelope maintained her calm demeanor as she responded. Okay, on behalf of Miss Jaina, I accept your allegiance. From now on, you are one of us. However, what she said next took Percy by surprise. According to Miss Jaina's request, I will be your superior from now on. I'll be responsible for liaising with you, receiving your information, arranging tasks and work for you, and also providing you with assistance. Percy was stunned. He hadn't expected that the woman he once pursued would become his superior, which made him feel awkward and uncomfortable. He remembered that when he ceased his relentless pursuit of Penelope, it was because he discovered some ambiguity between her and Ethan. Despite this, their reunion after a year was still filled with awkwardness. Suddenly, Percy realized this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The ambiguous relationship between Penelope and Ethan indicated that, despite her low position, she held a relatively core role in the Jaina faction. Becoming her subordinate would undoubtedly pave the way for his future promotion. So, he immediately put on a smiling face. Yes, Miss Clearwater, please rest assured, I will not let you down. However, after pledging his allegiance to the Jaina faction, Percy didn't immediately start contributing. Instead, Penelope had to assist him. Soon, with her help, Percy fell out with his family. The news quickly spread within the Ministry of Magic and eventually reached Fudge. As Percy anticipated, the Minister of Magic was not pleased that Percy could no longer continue his task of monitoring the Weasley family and Dumbledore. However, Fudge's confidence in him did not wane, nor did he remove him from his position as assistant minister. In Fudge's view, Percy's actions demonstrated his firm loyalty to the Ministry of Magic and to Fudge himself through practical actions. After all, it takes significant determination and courage to abandon one's family and side with the Ministry of Magic, qualities that Fudge greatly valued. Fudge's initial request for Percy to spy on his family was merely a whim. What he truly needed was a loyal and reliable assistant capable of sharing his workload. Percy had already met Fudge's requirements in terms of ability, and now his loyalty was assured. So, what was there to wait for? Fudge thought it was time for Percy to take office immediately. As the saying goes, people are separated from each other, and they don't know what to do. It's challenging to predict the actual situation. The narrative shifts to Ginny, indicating a new update. The author then makes a plea for custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, comments, and rewards, emphasizing the importance of support from the readers. Chapter 460. After Percy's fallout with his family, the Weasleys seldom spoke of him. Fred, George, Ginny, and Bill kept their suspicions to themselves, understanding that no explanation could mask Percy's betrayal. He had chosen his career over family, aligning with Fudge for personal gain. Shortly after Percy's departure, the Weasley household welcomed a new visitor. Ethan appeared beside the slightly worn garage with a burst of fire, the lively yard greeting him. Despite this not being his first visit, he paused to admire the burrow's unique charm. Its crooked stance and magically fortified stone walls exuded a simple, rugged beauty, though it seemed more worn than before. The yard, previously bustling with chickens, now lay in disarray, with scattered boots, a fishing net, and a rusty cauldron. Mrs. Molly Weasley, spotting Ethan from the kitchen window, quickly approached with a warm smile, wiping her hands on her apron. Ethan, anticipating her enveloping hug, instinctively stepped back to maintain some distance. "Molly, it's wonderful to see you," Ethan greeted, relieved to avoid the hug. He followed her into the cozy, albeit narrow, burrow. Inside, Ron, caught off guard by Ethan's arrival, dropped his spoon in surprise. The living room, though small, was warmly decorated. Each piece of furniture, though aged, was meticulously cared for. As Ethan settled at a wooden table, Mrs. Huff Weasley summoned tea and drinks with a flick of her wand, which gracefully landed on the table. After a sip of tea, Ethan turned to Mrs. Weasley with a gentle voice. "I came to talk about Percy. Unfortunately, I don't know where he is. He hasn't been in touch." A shadow of disappointment crossed Mrs. Weasley's face, but she nodded in understanding. Ethan reassured her. Children often forge their own paths. The conflict between Fudge and Dumbledore isn't insurmountable. I'm confident you'll reconcile with Percy one day. Mrs. Weasley managed a grateful smile, just as Fred and George burst into the room. "Ethan, perfect timing. Help us convince Mum to let us open a joke shop at Hogwarts," Fred exclaimed. George chimed in. She even threatened to return your investment. You're the student she admires most. Surely you can persuade her." Ethan, aware of Molly's fondness for him, wasn't surprised. His presence had always had a certain effect, especially on the opposite sex. Of course, older and younger women had different reasons for their affection. The latter showed their agreement physically, while the former was pleased to marry her daughter to him. Ethan looked at Mrs. Weasley with some surprise, noticing an embarrassed expression on her face. Clearly, she had intended to discuss this matter with Ethan later, but the twins had unexpectedly revealed it beforehand. Mrs. Weasley coughed awkwardly and attempted to explain, "Ethan, it's not that I'm against their plan. It's just that I think opening a store in Hogwarts might distract them from their studies." Ethan sighed softly, his gaze lingering on George and Fred for a moment before turning back to Mrs. Weasley. "Mrs. Weasley, please don't blame George and Fred. They have shown extraordinary talent in developing new magical toys and equipment. I am very optimistic about their prospects of opening a joke shop. Did you know that at Zuko's joke shop in Hogsmeade, the daily turnover can almost exceed the monthly salary of an average Ministry of Magic official? And the toys invented by George and Fred are far more interesting and innovative than Zuko's. I believe the commercial value they can create will far surpass that of Zuko." "Thank you, Ethan," Mrs. Weasley said, her brow furrowing slightly. "But as I mentioned before, Arthur and I would prefer they focus on their studies. Their current grades are quite poor. With such performance, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to secure a position at the Ministry of Magic in the future." "Mrs. Weasley, I think it's best to respect George and Fred's wishes. Forcing them into a career they dislike and to do things they don't want to will only cause them distress. You know their personalities. They are clever, witty, and enjoy playing pranks. In the rigid and strict environment of the Ministry of Magic, they might find themselves in trouble. After all, they are not Percy. They are not suited for politics." As Ethan finished speaking, the twin brothers sitting across the table nodded in agreement. Fred looked at his mother earnestly and said, "Mom, we really don't enjoy learning boring magical theory. We prefer to get hands-on and invent new magical toys and gear." George added, "Yes, Mom, although our grades aren't great, we are not without skills. Creating our own career would suit us better than working at the Ministry of Magic." Suddenly, a loud noise disrupted the peace of the burrow. The door was flung open, and Mr. Arthur Weasley's tired figure appeared. He walked straight to a chair and slumped down heavily, removing his glasses and closing his eyes. Ethan noticed that Mr. Weasley looked much more worn than the last time he saw him, clearly affected by Percy's departure. "Molly, you wrote to me about visiting the Green family," Arthur mumbled, reaching for the teapot. "When are we leaving?" He took a large sip of tea and sighed. "Bring out the new robe I bought last year. That suit is still decent. Regarding George and his friend's investment, if we cover the galleons they spent and then return it to Ethan, we'll be living in poverty again." "Maybe Percy is right," Arthur sighed. "Sorry, Molly, I got 2 tickets and wanted to go to the show with you, but now I have to." "Arthur, we don't have to go," Mrs. Weasley said, a hint of embarrassment in her voice. "Ethan has arrived at our house." She was puzzled by her husband's lack of awareness. This wasn't the first time he had been oblivious. When Harry first came to the Weasleys' house during the summer vacation of his first year, it took him a long time to notice Harry's presence. "Ethan, are you at our house?" Arthur was stunned for a moment, then raised his head, looking around until he finally spotted Ethan, who was smiling at him. He jumped up suddenly, the fatigue on his face momentarily replaced by surprise. Lee Howe's surprise was immediately replaced by enthusiasm. "Ah, Mr. Ethan Green, what a pleasure to meet you." Arthur walked over quickly and grasped Ethan's hand with vigor. "I'm so sorry. I didn't notice you were here just now." Ethan smiled and shook his head. "It's okay, Mr. Weasley. I also just arrived." When Ethan once again explained his purpose to Mr. Weasley, Arthur's expression suddenly turned somber. His eyes widened, and he said angrily to Mrs. Weasley, "I told you, there is no need to look for him. He must learn to take responsibility for his own choices." His voice was filled with anger and disappointment, clearly heartbroken by Percy's actions, and still unable to forgive him. However, when the conversation shifted to the twins, Arthur's attitude softened compared to his wife Molly's. He tilted his head slightly, pondered for a moment, then looked at the twins with a sense of relief and said, "I think Ethan is right. I'm very happy that they have achieved some success in school, which is even more amazing than what we did back then. Rather than forcing your children into a job they dislike and leading a mediocre life, it's better to encourage them to work hard and pursue what they love." His tone was laden with pride and expectation for the twins.